All right, welcome to our first conference on artificial intelligence and the global south with a particular focus on the Muslim world. My name is Mohammed Homain Mesh, and I'm the director of the Jaffer Institute for Interfaith Dialogue and Education at Miami-Dade College. I'm not going to be talking too much about the theme of the conference. We'll have Professor Misbahi, who will address the intersection of artificial intelligence and international relations, but I want to just make a few remarks about the logistics of today. So we decided not to have panel discussions in the interest of everyone hearing everyone and sort of leaving all that discussion for the later in the afternoon. So we will have about 2 hours for Q&A or discussion amongst the participants. So the way the day is going to proceed is that you will have our speakers come to the podium one at a time. Each speaker will have a maximum of 20 minutes. If you keep it within 20 minutes, I have some Italian chocolates that Simona has brought me. I'll give you one of those. But please keep it within, I would say, preferably 15 minutes. So we'll do that part. We have built in some cushion into the program, especially before lunch. But I think we've just eaten up that cushion already. So we have to be very punctual. And with that, I think that's all the logistics remarks I have. I want to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Mohammed Gomravi, who is the associate director, I should say, of the Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies here at FIU. He's been incredible in sort of collaborating with me, helping me out. Together, we put this thing, and I hope that we've done a good job. So we'll see how the day proceeds. And then after Mohammed, we'll have Irene Ferradas from the Jack Gordon Institute. She'll be talking about the work of the Institute. And following Irene, we'll have Professor Misbahi, the director of the Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies, and he will talk about the intersection of AI and international relations, the global south, and what prompted this conference and this conversation, and what we're trying to just get out of it moving forward, new pathways for collaboration, and things of that nature. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Mohammed Gomravi. Thank you.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you. To my colleagues and friends here this morning, welcome to Florida International University in Miami, Florida. It's an honor to welcome you to this year's conference, AI and International Relations, Perspectives from the Global South and Muslim World. There's been a lot of work building up to this point between myself, Dr. Huma Yunovash, and many others who have helped, but we finally made it. My name is Mohammed Gomrawi. I'm the Assistant Director of the Mohsen and Fawzia Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies, as well as a lecturer here in the Department of Politics and International Relations. Before we begin today's program, I wanted to take a moment to express gratitude to those who have made this event possible, including our collaborators and sponsors, the Mohsen and Fawzia Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies, the Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy, and the Jaffer Institute for Interfaith Dialogue and Education at Miami-Dade College. We meet at a moment when AI is no longer some distant frontier. Rather, it is becoming ubiquitous in our society and is a defining force in international relations. It's reshaping security frameworks, transforming war strategies, and reframing the very nature of power and influence in global affairs. At the same time, it challenges us to rethink global norms, to consider what responsible use of this technology involves, and ensure that this technology enhances rather than erodes international human rights and global stability. AI will shape geopolitics for decades to come, and it's for these reasons that this conference is both important and timely. Bringing diverse voices together in one room is not just valuable, it's essential. As we embark on the discussion ahead, I look forward to engaging with you all, challenging our preconceived notions, and hopefully building connections that last well beyond just this conference today. Again, welcome. I look forward to an inspiring and productive conference. And now it gives me pleasure to introduce Irene Faradaz from the Gordon Institute.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Irene Faradaz, and I work with the Jack T. Gordon Institute for Public Policy. Just this one? Okay, there we go. So today, I'm really excited to be able to share with you some of the work that we do here at the Institute. Nearly 40 years since 1985, we've been helping shape leaders and solutions needed to confront the defining challenges of the 21st century, which we know are many and varied. Oh, let me go back. So since its founding in 1985, the Gordon Institute has served as a trusted force in policy innovation. Our mission is straightforward but ambitious. Empower people and institutions to make informed decisions that shape a safer, more prosperous future. And to do that, one of the ways we do that is by being at the critical intersection of technology, security, and public policy. So cybersecurity, as we all know, has become one of the defining national security challenges of our time, and JGI is on the front lines of building both the talent and the strategies required to protect our digital future. Some of the things and programs and initiatives under this is, one of them is our Cybersecure Florida Training Initiative, which provides free cybersecurity training for Florida public sector employees, such as elected officials, municipal leaders, and those that are involved in our state. So this is a great opportunity to be able to keep our state safe and learn more about how to be cyber secure. Another program we have is the Veterans and First Responders Training Initiative, which prepares and empowers veterans, transitioning military personnel, first responders, military spouses, and their dependents to enter cybersecurity careers and protect our nation's critical infrastructure sectors. So it's a great way to continue protecting and serving our nation. Another program we have is Cybersecurity at FIU, which serves as the university's hub for all initiatives and programs involving cybersecurity throughout the university. Another thing another initiative that we are very proud of is our Intelligence Fellowship. So in addition to being home of some of the nation's most innovative academic and professional development programs for students pursuing careers in service, national security, cybersecurity, and intelligence, this Intelligence Fellowship is our premier workforce development pipeline. Through specialized courses, hands-on research, one-on-one mentorship, and direct engagement with recruiters from all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, such as the FBI, the CIA, and more, we're helping to train the next generation of intelligence professionals. And if you're still interested in national security and those kind of issues, but don't necessarily want to commit to the Intelligence Fellowship program, we do offer interdisciplinary undergraduate and graduate certificates in public policy, national security studies, and cyber intelligence, along with micro-credentials in high-demand areas, including cyber operations and public advocacy. So these are short, impactful, and completely free, and they're designed to meet the needs of today's workforce. When it comes to national security, JGI, the Institute, helps policymakers navigate an increasingly complex and rapidly shifting global landscape. One of our most powerful tools that I'm really excited to share with you today is our Security Research Hub, which is an open access platform that aggregates more than 400 databases on issues related to the Western Hemisphere. Everything from China's regional influence to transnational crime, environmental issues and impacts, Haiti's evolving security situation, and more. These interactive dashboards they help to provide real-time insights for policymakers, journalists, researchers, students, and anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about these really pressing issues. Another thing I wanted to mention was JGI's collaboration and partnership with FIU in DC. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Florida International University does have an office and a center in Washington, DC. So we help to facilitate collaborations with a variety of federal agencies to work on issues such as national security and helping research defense technologies. This actually is a photo of one of our students presenting one of our dashboards a couple months ago in when I believe the president of the university went over to Panama and they spoke with with various ambassadors at DC. So this just showcases how we provide that real world experience to our students and help them make those connections to end up, working in these fields. So just as a wrap up, at the Jack D. Gordon Institute, innovation meets global strategy. Whether in the classroom, the intelligence community, or cyberspace, JGI is driving solutions that matter, solutions that make our region, our nation, and our world more prepared, more resilient, and more secure. Please feel free to reach out to us via email, social media. We always, are looking forward to collaborating and working closely with other members of the university. And thank you again for your time.
Good morning. My name is Mohideen Misbahi. I'm a founding director at Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies. Thank you for coming. I've been thinking about this subject for a long time because I'm completely handicapped on technology, so I'm in a worse condition in this room. But at the same time, I'm very happy that I write with my hand. I don't rely on computers. And I also tell my students, use your hand, read books, make notes. Maybe that's the antidote to actually what is going on here. A bit of history about the Jaffer Center, because I think most of you may not know the history. The Jaffer Center came to an existence officially 2019 after a major gift, $2 million by the Jaffer family to establish this center. And FIU was farsighted enough to actually embrace this idea because we are known to be a Latin American center and Latin American studies. And so since then, the center has grown into, hopefully, what I laid down the foundation for 4 big things. One, to teach differently about Islam and Muslims. So we have new courses, graduate, undergraduate, we have certificate programs. Second, to become a bridge to the community, to local community, to national community, to international community. And I can report to you in details later on that we have done all 3 of them, both locally, nationally, and internationally. And then I thought maybe we can also build a research capacity at this university to make FIU beyond Latin American studies. And I think I can report to you that not through just my effort or Jaffer Center's effort, we probably have the largest concentration of the academics which working on Muslims and Muslim world and Islam in this university compared to, of course, in Florida it doesn't exist. I would say in the south of the United States it doesn't. If you go all the way to the east coast of the United States, there is no such a concentration of faculty that we have at this university. So I'm happy to report that. And I think then the idea was to establish a conference series on major issues of international significance. And of course, the AI is obviously emerging as one. I personally hope it's a bubble, but it won't be a bubble. It would have a huge impact on everything. And I reading last several months on this issue, I remember a long time ago the book by Sayyid Hossein Nasr on the environment and the crisis of modern man, which I read again this week. And I think a lot of new themes that's coming out is the result of the crisis of meaning and the crisis of modernity and who we are and where we're going. And Professor Nasr gave a talk in 1997 at this university. And I was looking at his book. I thought how fresh the book actually is. And then more recently, people are writing on actually the what's going on in our brain, actually, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. The works by Oxford professor and scientist and psychologist Jan McChrist, who is an amazing work in terms of which side of our brain is in charge of our life now. And then his conclusion is the wrong side, which is the empirical side, the one that counts numbers. And the right side, which is about meanings and life, is at the service of the other side of the brain. And that's amazing stories that he writes, and I recommend his work. And of course, the works by Paul Kingsworth, the new work that he's done on the inside the machine and how we all become part of this machine now. And I recommend that. I'm going to talk about that maybe later on in the conversation. And a much earlier work by Charles Taylor about the secular age. And he talks about how modern person actually will have a crisis of meaning eventually. This is 1999 book. So I hope this conference would look at the intersection of, I think, the crisis of philosophy, ontology, and how we do research, who we are. As somebody who has trained 43 PhDs so far, I'm really nervous about what I'm reading is real or is authentically plagiarized. And there's no way to find out, and so on. And of course, the other concerns is that what's going to happen with war and security, which is my interest. And we saw the implications of the war and security and war in Lebanon, in Gaza, and everywhere else. So welcome to the conference, and I'm looking forward to have a conversation later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Misbahi and Irene and Mohammed. So let's get started with our actual program. Our first speaker is my dear friend Eldar Mammadov, who actually, very heroically made it here all the way from Brussels. I know something happened with his connecting flight. It was, it was a total mess, but he made it. Thank you, Eldar, for going through that experience. So Eldar, as a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with, he's a very prolific writer. If you follow the Quincy Institute, the American Conservative, responsible statecraft, not aircraft, responsible statecraft, Eldar is all over those places. He's officially based in Brussels, and he's a non-resident fellow at the Quincy Institute and a member of the Pugwash Council on Science and World Affairs, which is a Nobel Peace Prize winning track to diplomacy organization committed to pursuing a world free of weapons of mass destruction, especially nuclear weapons. He is originally from Latvia. He's been a foreign policy expert for, I think, over three decades now. And as a Latvian diplomat from 1994 to 2003, he served in Latvia's embassies in Washington, D.C. and in Madrid. And he focused on Latvia's integration into NATO and the European Union, organizations that Eldar has recently been very critical of. He's also worked at the European Union Parliament, another organization that has recently been very critical of. So his work is fascinating. He just came from Iran. I think he was perhaps the only Western diplomat in Tehran Dialogue Forum. So maybe he could share later on his perspectives from Tehran and what's going on over there. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Eldar Mammadov. Thank you.
So good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me and for the kind words Mohammed just said. And indeed, as he said, responsible statecraft is much more responsible than aircraft. So, but yeah, somehow I made it here, and I'm delighted to be here, and looking forward to make the most out of it. And hopefully you'll find my my thoughts interesting also. So I was asked to talk about Azerbaijan and artificial intelligence. Indeed, from the outset, I have to say that that's a very relevant topic for Azerbaijan. And proof of that is that the country has adopted a new strategy on artificial intelligence just this year, in 2025, with the edict from the president, Ilham Aliyev, which shows the high priority that is being attached to that. So my core argument is that in case of Azerbaijan, artificial intelligence strategy is not primarily a technical document about economic innovation and development. It is first and foremost a political project for sovereignty and control. After securing territorial sovereignty and control over the internationally recognized territory of Azerbaijan in 2023, the Azerbaijani state has turned to securing technological sovereignty. However, Azerbaijan also is an illiberal political system. And in that context, the drive for AI is also intrinsically linked to the goal of consolidating domestic political control, consolidating it further. So this creates a fundamental paradox that threatens the strategy's success. So there are principally geopolitical and domestic drivers for that strategy. The geopolitical driver is explained with the context of military victories against Armenia in 2020 and 2023, which has led to establishing control over disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, and also tragically de facto ethnic cleansing of the local indigenous population, Armenian population. But one way or another, the primary national goal of reestablishing territorial sovereignty was achieved. Then the state moved on to secure digital and technological sovereignty as well. Why is that? Geopolitically speaking, the region in which Azerbaijan is located is still volatile. The peace agreement with Armenia is seemingly within the reach. There was a meeting in the White House chaired by President Trump with lots of statements and photo opportunities. But so far, the progress has been slow because there are still important hurdles to be overcome, but I'm not going to dwell on this in this context. So on the other hand, there is also a Russian factor and the war in Ukraine, and relations between Russia and Azerbaijan also in that context have been quite tense lately. So taking into account all of these circumstances, Azerbaijan feels that it must prepare for an uncertain and volatile future by reducing external dependencies and building internal resilience. AI is seen as a key domain for this. Now, concerning the domestic drivers, the main driver is to consolidate the illiberal state, which I alluded to earlier. The political system in Azerbaijan is highly centralized and authoritarian. The post-war period, despite the assurances from Azerbaijani leadership that it would lead to swift democratization of the republic, in fact saw instead a severe crackdown on dissent, journalists, civil society. Even as we speak today, the main leader of the remaining legal opposition party has been arrested over probably trumped-up charges. So when we analyze the artificial intelligence strategy in case of Azerbaijan, we cannot separate it from this internal logic of political control and consolidation. Furthermore, the strategy itself proves that. It allocates the State Security Service and the Special Communications Service central roles in AI strategy, in implementation of AI governance. This creates a kind of security state complex. The same tools supposedly built for economic modernization, like national data infrastructure, Azerbaijani language, artificial intelligence, surveillance tech, will be used for political control, mass monitoring, and stifling dissent. Azerbaijan is not inventing a new model. In fact, it is creating a sort of hybrid from existing already authoritarian playbooks, among which could identify the following. China. China, with its aspiration for social management, social credit points, and using AI for domestic stability. But Azerbaijan lacks China's scale and capabilities. Another model is United Arab Emirates, which borrows the rhetoric of being a modern investment-friendly tech hub, but Azerbaijan lacks the appeal of UAE in terms of attracting global tech talent. And then there is Russian model, which for historical reasons, of course, is the closest to Azerbaijan, and probably for that reason, that's the most influential one. It directly emulates the securitization of the internet, framing digital policies, information security, and giving security services a central role in implementation of AI strategy. So Azerbaijani hybrid could be defined as something that borrows rhetoric of modernization from the UAE, the social control aims from China, and the security service governance of Russia. All that tailored to a smaller post-Soviet context like that of Azerbaijan. So there are inherent challenges in that model. The state-led, control-oriented approach creates severe internal contradictions. So first is the bureaucratic innovation paradox. A top-down, risk-averse traditional bureaucracy is ill-suited to foster the experimental culture that produces breakthrough tech. Furthermore, procurement will favor probably connected insiders, not the most innovative minds, which would be entirely in line with Azerbaijani statehood experience up till now. Then there is the talent dilemma. The political environment in Azerbaijan repels, actually, talent. The 2022 post-Ukraine invasion influx of Russian IT workers saw a great disbalance between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Up to 50,000 Russian IT workers relocated to Armenia and only 300 to Azerbaijan. Think of it. So at the same time, the local brain drain continues, and the Azerbaijani state so far also hasn't done a great job in attracting the potential diaspora talents. Also because most members of Azerbaijani diaspora in Western countries are actually politically in opposition to the current government. So I will rush to my final thoughts. Azerbaijan is an interesting case study of a small-sized nation with ambitions to become mid-sized geopolitical player, a liberal state, and the question is whether it can harness such a disruptive technology as artificial intelligence for development, for prosperity, or whether it will fall into a trap of high-tech stagnation. strong on surveillance, strong on repression, but weak on innovation and development it officially seeks. I will stop here, and I'll be delighted to answer the questions and engage in discussion later. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker will be joining us via Zoom. My friend Mohammed Kochak, who is not a non-familiar face to FIU. He got his PhD in international relations from FIU. Currently, he serves as associate professor at the Social Sciences University of Ankara in Turkey. His research is primarily centered on international security, with a special emphasis on Turkey, Russia, and the Turkic world. He wrote his dissertation on Turkey-Russia relations, which was later on published by Lexington Books in 2022. He has a very visible social media and media presence in different outlets in Turkey and elsewhere. Today, he will be talking to us about artificial intelligence in the Muslim post-Soviet space, which is a fascinating topic. So I think that builds on quite well on Eldar's talk on Azerbaijan and its AI strategy. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Mohammed Kochak.
All right, thank you very much. And I am very pleased to be with you, even though it's virtually. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to Miami. It's been a while, actually. I left the country when right after I finished my PhD back in 2021. And, well, I couldn't come back later on. Well, maybe for the next event, I will be available. I am sorry about that, but I miss it. I missed Miami, I miss FIU, and I miss my friends. Happy to see you back there again. So, without further ado, let me briefly talk about my research that I am presenting. And hopefully, will be published as a book that will be later on prepared. So, well, as Eldar also mentioned, artificial intelligence has become essential variable in contemporary statecraft. It influences how governments administer society, how they protect sovereignty, and how they position themselves within an increasingly fragmented global order. So for states that are not technological superpowers, like Azerbaijan, as my colleague mentioned, AI is especially consequential. I mean, it offers opportunities for accelerated modernization, and it also introduces new forms of dependency that are harder to manage than traditional economic or military ties. So the Muslim post-Soviet states that I will be talking about, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, provide an analytically rich setting for examining these dynamics. These are politically diverse but structurally comparable states that operate in a sensitive geopolitical corridor. Their emerging AI strategies therefore offer an empirical window into how middle and small powers, like these countries, adapt to technological change while safeguarding their sovereignty and their current regimes, actually. So this study basically asks how do AI strategies adopted by the Muslim post-Soviet states reflect basically their state-building priorities, sovereignty concerns, and foreign policy orientations. So this question basically allows us to unpack basically three interlinked dimensions. First, state building, second, sovereignty, and third, foreign policy. And the argument of this study rests on four interrelated premises that explain why AI has become inseparable from questions of sovereignty and statecraft. First is data sovereignty. In the contemporary state system, data is the foundational resource of governance. as opposed to the earlier times where the theoretical dominance is basically enough, or dominance over population is enough. And technological sovereignty is the second thing that should be mentioned, because modern sovereignty hinges on the ability to adapt, localize, and or control key elements of AI ecosystem, which may or may not include national language models, compute and cloud infrastructure, and algorithmic tools deployed across critical sectors. Third is cultural civilizational sovereignty, which is interrelated with the first and the second point. AI now encodes identity. So therefore, when a state builds a national language model, it is also securing its civilizational continuity in algorithmic form. So the steps that these states are taking today will be more and more relevant in the near future as we see their technologies affecting more and more how they basically manage their statecraft and foreign policy. And lastly, AI as a foreign policy arena, because as I mentioned, AI creates new dependencies, new hedging strategies, and new influence channels. So I argue that in these Muslim post-Soviet region, this language is basically spoken through long-standing traditions of multi-vector diplomacy, state-led modernization, and pursuit of autonomy in a crowded geopolitical environment whose importance is actually increasing year by year. And I also argue that the Muslim post-Soviet space is an ideal laboratory because they inherited their bureaucracy, their statecraft from the Soviet Union. They are peculiar in their heritage because they are also Muslim states, unlike all the other states in the former Soviet space. And they lay on a strategic geography between great powers, namely China and Europe. So not only so their importance are growing not only because of their raw materials, but also the corridors that are being built or being projected through their lands. So based on these characteristics, the Muslim post-Soviet region offers a unique opportunity to observe how emerging powers shape AI in line with their political ambitions, institutional legacies, and foreign policy strategies. So let me briefly summarize or examine how these countries' AI strategies actually fit to their political stance, how they manage their countries, and how they basically run their statecraft and foreign policy. First one is Azerbaijan. I mean, the Eldar already made a great introduction and actually basically told what I was going to say. Azerbaijan approaches AI as an extension of its state authority and national security. Its political system basically prioritizes stability, centralized control, and strategic diversification, especially towards Turkey. So these structural preferences are reflected directly in how Azerbaijan designs and implements its AI agenda. So therefore, AI is not treated as a commercial, experimental, or economical field, but a tool for strengthening state capacity, protecting critical infrastructure, and basically preserving the dominance of the current regime over this new arena. So in accordance with that, Azerbaijan adopted the national AI strategy that will be implemented between 2025 to 2028 via a presidential decree signaling top-down control and framing AI as a strategic national priority. It began establishing Azerbaijan Artificial Intelligence Academy to cultivate a state-aligned, nationally trained AI workforce. It assigned AI implementation not only to civilian ministries, but also state security agencies, confirming the securitized nature of AI governance. So it also developed a 30-plus item agricultural AI roadmap using AI for strategic economic sectors, rolled out pilot AI project designed incentives to attract AI firms into state-managed technology parks, and formally partnered with Turkey in accordance with its foreign policy agenda on joint AI goals. Therefore, every step basically reflects Azerbaijan's security-centered state building, a search for technological sovereignty, and a foreign policy preference for diversification anchored in Turkey rather than great power dependence. Second one is Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan's AI trajectory is slightly different than Azerbaijan because it emerged from a long-standing commitment to technocratic governance and balanced foreign policy. So the state aims to become a digital hub for Eurasia, and it also has the capacity to do so because it's the most developed country, basically economically, in this region. So in accordance with that, Kazakhstan introduced national AI standards for education, unique in the region actually, showing regulatory depth and institutional sophistication. It created specialized ministries devoted to AI and digital development, integrated AI into cybersecurity governance, positioned AI within diplomatic dialogue with the European Union, so therefore linking it to broader themes of connectivity and green transition, invested heavily in human capital and infrastructure to build a regional digital hub, and pursued, just like Azerbaijan, multi-vector technological approach, working simultaneously with Western, Chinese, and also like Azerbaijan, Turkish partners. So therefore, Kazakhstan's multi-vector foreign policy is replicated in AI, and AI becomes a tool for Kazakhstan's regional leadership, actually. So next country is Uzbekistan. So Uzbekistan's post 2016 reforms that started with the second president Mirzoyev prioritize economic modernization, administrative professionalization, and cultural revival. Therefore, AI becomes a master tool for this reformist agenda. The state's approach is expansive, systematic, and growth-driven, reflecting the desire to build capacity to quickly develop without relying on a single external actor. So within the framework of this, Uzbekistan adopted a comprehensive AI technology development strategy to 2030 with clear quantitative goals, approved a massive 60-plus project AI roadmap, developed 64 ministerial and 22 interagency AI projects, demonstrating whole of government mobilization, plans to launch 100 new AI projects in 2026, and engaged in diversified technological cooperation with not only Turkey, but also Europe, China, and multinational technology firms. So therefore, Uzbekistan's actions also reveal state-led developmentalism, sovereignty-seeking, capacity building, and diversified foreign engagement. Next country is Kyrgyzstan, has limited financial and technological resources, unlike Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, and also less so with Uzbekistan, yet it remains politically pluralistic and identity conscious. As a result, for Kyrgyzstan, AI becomes a tool for symbolic sovereignty, like strengthening language, culture, and governance norms, rather than a sector of industrial or security investment, which Kyrgyzstan is lacking the resources for. So for this reason, within this framework, Kyrgyzstan promotes AI as a part of national identity formation, including projects that will create Kyrgyz language chatbots, created National Artificial Intelligence Council, propose a regional AI hub in Kyrgyzstan, and focuses on ethical regulation and normative frameworks, not large industrial systems like the countries that I mentioned before. Lastly, Turkmenistan, actually it represents a cautious controlled digitalization because its political system is inward-facing, secrecy-oriented and sovereignty protective in its actually extremes. As such, it avoids public-facing commitments and pursues digital development slowly and under strict state supervision. In accordance with that, it has issued no publicly articulated AI strategies, maintains a closed information environment, limiting open data and AI innovation, and engages in selective low-profile digital cooperation consistent with its permanent neutrality doctrine. So we only see some state visits from Turkmenistan to other countries visiting AI hubs and probably thinking or projecting whether they can do the same in Turkmenistan. But again, I mean, for the reasons that are related with the state's current position, those seem unlikely. Despite their differences, all 5 Muslim post-Soviet states exhibit 4 common drivers in their AI trajectories. First, they see capacity building as the foundation. They pursue digital sovereignty, and they tend to use AI as state building and try to make sense of, or use AI to boost their identity projects. But again, I mean, they have divergent national logics. Just to reiterate, Azerbaijan has a security status logic, Kazakhstan multi-vector, Uzbekistan developmental, Kyrgyzstan normative, and Turkmenistan has a controlled and secretive design. So this is not only important for these 5 countries, but also I think it represents a very interesting story as a microcosm, if you will, to understand the future of AI in our global order. First of all, AI creates new forms of power to utilize and to dominate for these states. And second, multipolarity and multi-vectoral governance for these states becomes technological. Third, AI enables new types of diplomacy for them. Sovereignty itself is actually being redefined. And in conclusion, these Muslim post-Soviet states are not just passive recipients of this global technology. They are actually actively shaping AI strategies that reflect their political systems, their sovereignty preferences, and their foreign policy traditions. For them, AI becomes a way to modernize governance, reinforce identity, diversify strategic partnerships, and enhance autonomy in a world defined by digital power. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mohammed, for that little tour of the post-Soviet space and AI. Our next speaker is also Turkish by nationality, but he's joining us from Almaty, Kazakhstan, where he's a visiting professor at Turan University. He's also a lecturer at Cappadocia University in Turkey. He previously served as professor and director of the Center for Global Governance at Shanghai University and taught at James Madison, Portland State, Radford, Virginia Tech, and Maltepe University, also in Turkey. Tuğrul Keskin's research focuses on China, Central Asia, Middle East relations, global governance, and the political economy of technology and AI. He was the founding director of Sociology of Islam. I'm sure a lot of folks here are familiar with that journal. And also founder of the Global China Academic Network, which I highly encourage you to join. And he has a forthcoming book titled Shifting Frontiers, where Tuğrul explores Islamism, China, and U.S. influence in Central Asia's geopolitical landscape. So the title of Tuğrul's talk today is Algorithmic Ummah, Turkey's AI Ambitions and the Neoliberal Pan-Islamist Reconfiguration of the Global South. Professor Keskin, the floor is yours.
Second. Evet. Evet. Thank you very much for the invitation and for this conference. Unfortunately, my school ends next week. That's why I'm still here. I'll be back to the United States hopefully next week. My title of my talk today: Algorithmic Ummah, Turkey's AI Ambition and the Neoliberal Pan-Islamist Reconfiguration of the Global South. Artificial intelligence has rapidly become central arena of the global geopolitical competition, while dominant narratives emphasize a bipolar rivalry between the United States and China. A growing number of the middle powers increasingly view AI as a crucial domain in which to assert strategic autonomy, secure national prestige, and cultivate new forms of the diplomatic influence. Turkey stands out among these actors because its AI ambitions are deeply entangled with the Islamic civilizational rhetoric and political economic model shaped by the authoritarian neoliberalism and an inspiration to emerge a technological leader for the Muslim majority societies and broader global south. Since the early 2010, Ankara has developed a foreign policy discourse that blends neoliberal modernization with an Islamic inflected form of soft power. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's frequent invocations of the national technology, digital independence, and civilization revival has elevated AI to symbolic and the institutional center of Turkey's geopolitical imagination. Turkey's National Artificial Intelligence Strategy 2021-2025 articulates AI not merely as a technical asset, but as a component of the national survival, economic competitiveness, and Islamic civilizational renewal. The expansion of the Turkey's AI-driven defense capabilities, especially global visibility of the Bayraktar drones in conflicts from Libya to Ukraine and from Azerbaijan to Horn of Africa, has further enabled Turkey to position itself as a model of the indigenous technological development for emerging states seeking alternatives to Western military systems or dominance. The convergence of these developments has inspired the conceptualization of the algorithmic ummah, a transnational moral and political community imagined through the algorithmic infrastructures, data governance architectures, and AI-enabled defense technologies. Understanding Turkey's AI's trajectory requires a theoretical framework that goes beyond narrow analysis of the technological capacity or military modernization. Critical political economy provides an essential foundation by revealing how digital infrastructures reflects underlying class relations, state capital dependencies, and market-driven logic of accumulation. Turkey's trajectory exemplifies the fusion of the neoliberal economic reforms with an increasingly centralized authoritarian governance model, producing what Deacon characterizes as an authoritarian neoliberal developmentalism. In this model, technological initiatives serve dual purposes, enhancing the state capacity for surveillance, the control, while simultaneously reinforcing private capital accumulation through defense industrial expansion and public-private partnership. Postcolonial technology studies offer a complementary perspective by highlighting how technological modernity has historically been inseparable from the Western imperial hierarchies. Against this background, Turkey seeks to articulate a distinctly non-Western technological identity grounded in Islamic civilizational history and strategic positioning within the global South. Turkish political discourse reframes AI as a field in which Muslim majority societies can reclaim technological agency, challenge Western epistemic dominance, and articulate alternative vision of the digital modernity. This framing is further supported by the cultural intellectual project that promotes the idea of the civilizational tech synthesis, in which Islamic ethics, Ottoman heritage, and nationalist modernization are fused into a single narrative of technological resurgence. Building on this framework, my paper developed the concept of the algorithmic ummah to interpret Turkey's efforts integrate technological ambition with the Islamic solidarity. The algorithmic ummah refers to an emergent transnational community constructed through the digital infrastructure, surveillance technologies, AI-driven defense systems, and the rhetoric of the civilizational unity. It simultaneously functions as an ideological project aimed at reasserting Turkey's leadership within the Muslim world, as a material network anchored in the defense export, data partnership, data governance partnership, and digital diplomacy. This dual character makes the algorithmic Ummah a critical object for understanding contemporary South-to-South geopolitics. Turkey's AI ecosystem is defined by the hybrid structure that combines state planning, entrepreneurial innovation, and a militarized technological base. The National Artificial Intelligence Strategy established broad objectives, including the training of new specialists, the expansion of the AI contribution to GDP, and the cultivation of the public-private collaboration. The Digital Transformation Office, operating under the presidency, has become the central bureaucratic actor in shaping Turkey's digital governance infrastructure. It oversees projects related to cloud sovereignty, cybersecurity standards, integrated public service platforms, and the national data management system. Through these initiatives, the state frames digital transformation as a both civilizational responsibility and economic imperative. While civilian AI initiatives remain important, Turkey's global visibility in AI is primarily driven by its defense industry. Firms such as Aselsan, Roketsan, Turkish Aerospace Industries, TAI, have long played central roles in the defense modernization, but Baykar has emerged as the most emblematic expression of the Turkey's AI defense nexus. Bayraktar TB2 drone, equipped with the machine learning assisted targeting, autonomous navigation, and real-time data analysis capabilities, has become a symbol of the Turkey's technological nationalism. Its deployment in numerous conflicts, its export to more than 20 states have elevated Turkey's status as a leading drone supplier for the global south. The international success of the Turkish drones has reinforced the perception of that Turkey offers an accessible, reliable, and ideologically aligned technological alternative to Western defense system. Domestically, Turkey's digital transformation is characterized by expanding architecture of the surveillance, predictive policing, biometric identification, and smart city monitoring system actually. Is very similar to the Chinese system. Platforms such as Polnet, biometric border controls, citywide camera networks, collectively illustrate the consolidation of what Yeşil terms hybrid digital authoritarianism. This system blurs the boundaries between civilian governance and security operations, embedding algorithmic surveillance deeply within everyday life in the Turkish citizens. Moreover, because of the many of these systems are later exported to partners states in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, Turkey's domestic surveillance model becomes a template for the informational digital influence. Turkey's AI ambition unfolds within the broader ideological framework shaped by the neoliberal pan-Islamism. This framework combines market-oriented growth strategies with the Islamic civilizational messaging, creating a discursive environment in which technological modernization is equated with the religious and moral responsibility. This rhetoric is reinforced by the Turkey's strategic partnership across the global south. Ankara has cultivated deeply technological ties with Pakistan, Qatar, Somalia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and numerous African states. These relationships often include defense cooperation agreements, joint technology development programs, drone training academies, and technical assistance in the cybersecurity and e-governance systems. Although these partnerships are frequently articulated as expression of fraternity and solidarity, their structure often reflects patterns of the dependency characteristics of neoliberal digital capitalism. Diaspora networks further reinforce Turkey's position within the global digital landscape. Turkish and Muslim diaspora communities in Germany, Gulf regions, and parts of Africa serve as important nodes for AI entrepreneurship, fintech innovation, and religiously oriented digital cultural platforms and online education system. These networks amplify Turkey's technological soft power while embedding Islamic cultural identity within global digital economies. The algorithmic ummah manifests through the both symbolic narratives and material infrastructures. Narratively, Turkey uses AI and digital governance to project itself as a civilizational leader capable of harmonizing Islamic identity within modern technological capacity. This vision rebrands Turkey as a central node in a transnational Muslim future defined not by the territorial borders, but by shared technological infrastructure and moral commitment. It's an attempt to transform Turkey's historical legacy and political aspirations into claim for leadership over dispersed global community. And materially, the algorithmic ummah takes the shape through the export of drones, surveillance systems, fintech platforms, biometric databases, and e-governance software. These infrastructure blind clients states a Turkey technological ecosystem creating forms of network dependency that extend beyond conventional diplomacy. For example, Azerbaijan's drone capacity, Somali's digital security architecture, and Pakistan Joint Production Initiative all demonstrate how AI and defense technologies became mechanism for sustaining long-term political and economic ties, actually. Turkey's also promote Islamic ethics in AI governance, invoking principles such as justice, stewardship, and accountability. These ethical claims position Turkey as a mediator between Chinese authoritarian model, US corporate model, and European regulatory model. While this ethical discourse remains underdeveloped, it reinforces Turkey's civilizational branding within the Muslim world and broader global south. The algorithmic ummah does not emerge solely from the discourse or aspirational rhetoric. Its material foundation lies in Turkey's reorganized defense industry. Islamic foundations, pro-government business conglomerates, and transnational ideological network and Islamic movements. After the failed 2016 coup attempt, Turkey's defense institutions were reshaped and aligned more closely to the political and religious ecosystem supporting the JDP, Justice and Development Party. The president of the defense industries became deeply integrated in the government's ideological priorities, transforming defense modernization into the civilizational mission that intertwine technological innovation with the religious and national identity. For example, Baykar stands at the center of this transformation as the most symbolic, powerful expression of the Turkey's techno-Islamic project, led by Selçuk Bayraktar. Baykar's public identity blends religious devotion, entrepreneurial innovation, and nationalist pride. Events like the Technofest, along with the Baykar's partnership with Islamic youth organizations such as TÜGVA and TÜRGEV, the president of this organization, one of them is the son of the Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Bilal Erdogan actually, create a social environment in which engineering, robotics, and drone production are framed as a sacred contribution to nations and the Muslim world. Through these initiatives, Baykar cultivates a generation of the technologically skilled youth who view the AI defense innovation as expressions of religious duty and national service. Islamic foundations play a critical role in shaping the ideological undercurrents of Turkey's technological ecosystem. Organizations such as TÜGVA, TÜRGEV, Ensar, İlim Yayma Vakfı Foundation serve as incubators for young engineers, bureaucrats, and administrators whose moral and political worldviews are aligned with the AKP, Pan-Islamism. Meanwhile, the Marif Foundation extends Turkey's ideological reach globally by establishing schools and educational programs in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and many of which later serve as a platform for deepening technological defense and corporations. Pro-government businesses, conglomerates, including the Al Bayrak and Kalyon groups, these are big corporations. This ecosystem by providing financial, logistical, and media infrastructure. Al Bayrak Media, Arm Yeni Şafak amplifies narratives of the technological nationalism and Islamic revivalism, while Kalyon contributes a dual-use infrastructure project involving data centers, airports, industrial zones. On the other hand, Sadat, S-A-D-A-T, it's similar to the Blackwater in the United States, a private security firm, a defense consultancy with overtly pan-Islamist messaging. Further, internationalize Turkey's militarized soft power by training armed forces in Muslim-majority countries from Nigeria to Azerbaijan. And the international circulation of the Turkish drones and AI enhanced surveillance system reinforced these ideological and institutional networks. In Qatar, Turkey present its military. 1 second. 5 minutes. Okay. Network. In Qatar, Turkey presents its military export as a gesture of the fraternal protection. In Pakistan, co-production agreements are framed as an extension of the shared Islamic destiny. In Somalia, Turkey's military base and drone training center function as a symbol of the mentorship and guardianship. In Libya and Azerbaijan, Turkey's involvement is justified as an obligation to defend fellow Muslim communities. These relationships produced long-term technological dependencies as client states became reliant on the Turkish software, updates, algorithmic targeting, packaging, and data integration interfaces. This defense industry thus constitutes material skeleton of the algorithmic ummah. It provides hardware, software, ideological legitimacy, and transnational networks through which Turkey AI-driven civilizational project is sustained. Contradiction and paradoxes. Although the algorithmic ummah present compelling narratives, it's characterized by deep contradiction. Turkey frequently proclaims its commitment to digital sovereignty, but remains structurally dependent on the imported semiconductors, Western cloud platforms, NATO defense architectures, and Chinese hardware. This creates gap between the rhetoric of the independence and the material realities of the global technological dependency. Another contradiction emerges between the discourse of the pan-Islamic solidarity and Turkey's national interest. While Ankara presents itself as a guardian of the Muslim world, its foreign policy remains pragmatic and selective, adjusting its stance on the issues such as Uyghur activism, Gulf rivalries, human rights concern based on the strategic calculations rather than the principles of the Islamic unity. Similarly, although Turkey critiques Western digital imperialism, it continues to court Western venture capital, integrate with the US tech firms, and really rely heavily on the European digital market. Conclusion, Turkey pursuing an algorithmic ummah represents a significant transformation in the relationship between technology, civilizational politics, and geopolitical strategy. By integrating Islamic solidarity discourse with the AI-driven modernization and defense industrial expansion, Turkey seeks to assert itself as a moral and technological leader within the Muslim world and the global South. Yet the project is riddled with the contradictions that reflects the structural limits, middle power technological nationalism. Turkey's digital sovereignty remains constrained by the global supply chains. Its pan-Islamic rhetoric is often overshadowed by the pragmatic national interest or small group interests, power elite interests in the Turkish government, basically Recep Tayyip Erdoğan and his close allies. Nevertheless, the algorithmic ummah remains as a powerful framework for understanding of how states in the global south use technology to reshape moral geographies, challenge Western-centric digital orders, and articulate new civilizational futures. As AI continues to transform global politics, Turkey's experiment offers a critical window into the possibilities and tension of the building alternative technological worlds in the multipolar age. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Torrol. Moving along, our next speaker is joining us from San Francisco. Professor Mahmoud Munshipuri is a professor of international relations at San Francisco State University and a lecturer at Fall Program for Freshmen at UC Berkeley. Dr. Munshipuri is the author of multiple books, including In the Shadow of Mistrust, The Geopolitics and Diplomacy of U.S.-Iran Relations, published by Oxford University Press in 2022. He is the editor of Why Human Rights Still Matter in Contemporary Global Affairs. This was published in 2020. Perhaps he would have chosen a different title now, but anyway. He's currently working on a book titled Climate Change, Environmental Refugees, and Human Rights in the Middle East. That is going to be published by Roman and Littlefield. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Professor Munshi Puri, who will be talking to us about the Muslim world's reaction to artificial intelligence, challenges, and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Yes. I would like to express my deep gratitude to Dr. Humayun Vash for actually organizing, coordinating for your time, efforts, and energy to put this conference together. I am also honored to be in the presence of such an illustrious group of scholars. I would like to start by saying that the aim of this presentation is to demonstrate the ability of the Islamic world to meet the challenge of AI and robotics. Very much depends on a sort of adopting a very pragmatic, forward-looking, and very proactive approach. I must admit that the most controversial aspect is the question of alignment of AI and robotics with local normative, cultural, and ethical values. The reaction of the Muslim world to AI and robotics is mixed and multidimensional. It is basically driven by concerns about ethical bias, the importance of the foreign dominance, and the theological implications and consequences for adopting this method, and also the way that technology can be used for a very kind of responsible and very transparent way of using that technology. I should begin by saying that the computer science and specifically programming languages have always been Western-centric, Western Anglo-focused. As I look at the AI today is in earliest stages of learning phase, storing information. In the future, it will be a super smart and likely to surpass human abilities and capabilities and intelligence as it advances. The downside of this technology is that it's going to control the users at some point in the future. That is to say that the machine will outsmart the human beings. But the upside of that, it is going to be precise and accurate. I just recently read a piece in a medical journal that said that the AI is not, in the medical profession, is not going to replace doctors, but rather it's going to empower them and also empower patients with better ways to understand information and learn how to provide better care for both patients and the way that doctors can actually treat that. Specifically, it was talking about what is called IBD, which is inflammatory bowel disease. And the AI could be very, very critical and helpful in dealing with this problem by empowering the doctors. The problem areas for the Muslim world clearly are in the realm of ethical norm setting and in large part because those who are encoding biased information to AI and robotics are pretty much Western-centric in their development and in the regulations. And there need to be some kind of proactive way of application of AI that adopts a nuanced approach while also protecting its moral and ethical values of the Muslim communities. What is the major threat that AI and robotics pose to the Muslim communities is the question of the erosion of privacy and autonomy, and I must add the erosion of traditional authority. I'll get back to that later on. Other challenges that I can foresee in the future have, having to do with autonomy, whether or not individuals' free will could actually run contradictory to the certain traditional, authorities in the system. The form of encoded biased information is a major issue. Issues such as justice and fairness, privacy, transparency, And most of all, the issues that I see mostly in literature is the notion of transhumanism, which is going beyond the natural human capabilities and capacities. And job replacement is going to present a major problems. I just heard Elon Musk saying that in the future we need to pay attention to two important things. One is that money is going to be irrelevant because we're going to move towards the cryptocurrency and bitcoins. And secondly, he argued that people having a job would be kind of optional. The replacement of the human function is going to be an incredibly difficult challenge for the Muslim world to deal with that, not only in terms of the physical job loss, but in terms of whether or not the role of the religious leaders such as imams are going to be more important than the science and technology. And I think there would be contradictions there that I don't know how can Muslim world can actually deal with that, but it would certainly present problems. In terms of local cultural traditions, the Muslim world is going to rely on its own understanding of certain things such as public interest, notions of justice, whether it's climate justice, intergenerational justice, compassion, and privacy and dignity. All of these concepts are going to be questions in the age of robotics and AI. The key challenges is the obstacles to reliable human control over the process of developing and properly utilizing AI. There are going to be some environmental implications. I'll talk about both the gains and the loss of environmental problems that we'll face in the era of the AI and robotics. Ethical questions are going to be coming up with regard to every profession, including the machine intelligence and so on and so forth. Let me just briefly talk about climate change, because nowadays I actually teach a course at UC Berkeley on climate change, and I'm working on a book on climate change. I think there would be tremendous gains in the area of the climate change. AI is going to improve climate models and predictions. It's going to optimize energy efficiency in grids and buildings. AI is going to enhance sustainable agriculture. It will help us to monitor, protect ecosystems and natural resources in much more efficient ways. And by analyzing all kinds of databases and data sets, AI can help identify greenhouse gas emissions sources, which are the major problems in terms of the global warming and pollution and so on and so forth. Let me stay with the narrative of the gains a little bit. AI will predict extreme weather events for better preparations to contain disasters. It will accelerate the development of new sustainable materials. It will improve agricultural efficiency. It will help us to better monitor ecosystems. It will develop climate adaptation as well as mitigation strategies. In those regards, AI is going to be extremely helpful. But there would be some risks equally involved in adopting that system. Certainly, it will pose tremendous climate threats through the substantial energy and water intensive. AI is going to be enormously energy and water intensive, and this is going to be a major problem. Extracting critical minerals for hardware, its use in accelerating fossil fuel explorations is going to be another downside of that. AI could spread misinformation depending on what kind of ended code are actually being fed into the system. It will definitely encourage unsustainable consumerisms. And finally, the question that always comes back to haunt us, those of us who are actually doing research on that, is the question of who is feeding information to the machine. The lack of transparency is the key issues. In recent years, we have seen regional focus, and as was actually explained by the two or three previous presenters in a very eloquent way, we have seen country-specific and also regional attempts. We have seen in the Persian Gulf region attempts and initiatives by Saudi, Qatar, and UAE focusing on AI compared to the others. For instance, in Saudi, you have Vision 2030 that definitely includes robotics and AI in that project. Saudi Arabia claims to be the future leading global hub of innovation, not only in the region, but globally. In Iran, we saw that in the past May, there was a meeting of science ministers of 15 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperations. They gathered in Tehran and they engaged into very important dialogue about the ways to actually they can handle the issues of climate change, the problems having to do with climate change and extreme weather patterns within the broader context of applying AI for sustainable development. So there are attempts that are happening within the Muslim world trying to come to grips with the realities of the robotics. I expect that in 2029, for instance, not too far from here, probably 4 or 5 years from now, AI is going to dominate our life. The younger generation of the Muslims are acutely aware of that. They've listened to some of their arguments. Their arguments basically is that, look, we missed the Industrial Revolution, the so-called tool revolution. We missed that. We missed the internet and social media revolution, which is known as information revolutions. And the younger generation of the Muslim world, I see them making the argument that we cannot afford to miss the AI revolution. It's going to be detrimental if we miss that. Many younger Muslims are calling for engagement and calling for proactive leadership in the development of AI. Some even worry about the over-reliance on AI could undermine the role of human scholarship, judgment, empathy, and wisdom. By way of concluding my talks, let me say that the notion that AI is entirely unregulated, I think, is baseless. There are all kinds of controls exercised by state-level laws, by federal executive actions, in industry. Even the industry has this way of kind of self-regulating ways of affecting AI development. So to argue that AI is kind of totally unregulated, I think is baseless. One of the major challenges that the Muslim world will face has to do with questions of ethics and theological questions of erosion of traditional authority and trust. And not only erosion of traditional authority and trust, but the traditional power of certain imams, especially in the Shia communities, that they have powerful influence over the societal aspects of the communities. Ultimately, the Muslim world, I argue, that cannot stand back and avoid the deployment of this technology by sticking their heads in the sand. And let me finish up with the 4 takeaways. I think AI lacks the nuanced interpretation and moral reasoning that human scholarship provides, and that's the major flaws of the AI. Ethical alignment. I come back to the notion of alignment, which is very important. Ethical alignment and bias programming continue to present challenges for the Muslim world. How Muslim world is going to actually deal with science and technology remains to be seen. Muslim scholars and experts cannot be excluded from judgments on AI. They should be included in a broader framework of dealing with this matter. How can they manage to actually reconcile their way of thinking with the robotics and AI remains to be seen. I think it's going to be much more complicated than it appears at first brush and first glance. Human agency and free will, which is there poses, I think, a critical challenge to the Islamic conceptions of human existence and divine authority. How they can be reconciled, how they can be reconciled with the notions of technology remains to be seen. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And Dr. Humayun, it has been a pleasure. I have to rush to San Francisco to teach, so I might not be able to be available for Q&A sessions. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Monshipur. I don't know what laptop you were using, but the sound quality was actually very good. So I need to get information on that. Anyway, we're coming up on our first break. So we're going to take let's say an 18-minute break. We'll get back at 11:05 on the dot. Thank you. So our next speaker is Professor Ekaterina Kasiewicz. She's a PhD in political science, and she's a leading research fellow and associate professor at the Faculty of World Economy and International Affairs at HSG University in Moscow, and that's the leading university in Russia. Her research examines the cultural, economic, and political dimensions of Russia's foreign policy and its relations with Latin American countries. She has led multiple international research projects and published widely in peer-reviewed journals in English, Spanish, and Russian. Her latest book is Extra-Regional Powers in Latin America, The Impact of the US, EU, China, and Russia. It was published by Brill in 2024, where she analyzes strategies and patterns of extra-regional engagement in Latin America. And her current project focuses on Eurasia's AI policy, global technology governance, and content regulation. And her talk today is going to be on Russia's AI policy, strategic priorities, regulation, and international dimensions. Actually, she is among the few presenters today, no pressure on others, who has submitted her final manuscript for the book project that is part of this conference. So thank you so much, Katrina, for being on time with your chapter. And it's an amazing chapter. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. So with that, let's turn it over to Katrina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to this interesting scientific event. So my current presentation is titled Russia's Artificial Intelligence Policy. And I have my presentation. Yeah. So, I mean, it's obvious for all that the artificial intelligence has become a central issue on international development agenda worldwide, including Russia. And taking into account the certain ambitions of the Russian government toward the changing of geopolitical situation, Russia has also joined the so-called global AI race. But it's very important to take into account that Russia's national strategy for the development of AI was adopted in October 2019, which was significantly later than the Western countries to which the Russian government has traditionally looked for guidance in creation while creating the specific areas for development strategies, such as digital strategy for the development of digital technologies and artificial intelligence also. The main objective of this paper is to analyze the evolution and the Russia's strategic priorities, regulatory framework, and its international dimensions. So my topic will be has actually 4 parts. The first part in the first part I will be talking about the key stages in the development of the artificial intelligence policy in the legislation in Russia. Second part I will be talking about the specific features of the Russia approach to the generative AI, and the third section is going to be about the conceptual and legal differences between the Russia AI strategy and the strategies of other countries, which are considered as models that the Kremlin particularly used as some kind of references point. And the fourth section is going to be about the main areas of application of AI tools in Russia foreign policy strategy. So I want to emphasize that I've been using the empirical data from the open sources and open sources basis, such as official documents of Russian government and bodies, materials from the international and Russian organization, and the statistical databases, such as reports from Russian Statistics Agency, Росстатистика, and the Ministry of Digital Development, Mincifre, and also the reports made by the Administration of President, Ministry of Economic Development, Ministry of Industry and the Trade. So now I'm talking about the main stages of the development of the policy and legislation in the artificial intelligence regulation in Russia. It can be defined 5 main stages. The first stage of the development of AI instruments started in the late Soviet era, which was in 1950s, and the first official seminar which was devoted to the topic of the development of AI, took place in 1954, which it was titled as the Automata and Thinking, which was led by the famous academic Lopunov. But it's very important to emphasize that during the USSR, there were some kind of limitation on the development of artificial intelligence technology, taking account that the strong ideological component, which was very typical for the USSR, was limiting any possibilities of creating any analogs of human intelligence. Taking account that the whole communist and socialist policy and a strong ideological component. But even under these difficult circumstances, in 1974 was created a special agency, a scientific council on AI, which get finally pretty important, pretty big financial support from the government. And so in late 1970s, where started some important projects, research projects devoted to the AI, such as the problems on AI and the constructors. But in the late 1980s, taking account of the start of the difficult situation in the situation of the upcoming the collapse of the Union, USSR began to lag behind in the race of the development of the AI instruments. And so the first step was characterized from one part by the certain institutionalization, but at the same time by the limited practical support. Stage 2, which can be titled as a preparatory phase, was the characteristic of the period starting from the 1991 as a year of collapse, or the official collapse of the USSR, and until the 2005. So this period was like some kind of contradictory period, because from one side, the decade of the 1990s was characterized by the rapid development of internet and any IT technology within the whole post-Soviet space. And so it was characterized by the widespread computerization. So the whole population were buying the personal computers, and so the population of the whole post-Soviet countries were trying to take part of the development of the internet technologies and to get this to participate in the new technological wave of development of the world in general. So in 1995, the government created the Federal Center for Applied AI Development, which was oriented to promote AI solutions for the business. This center exists still but after 2010, the center was integrated into Ministry of Industry and Trade, and was financed by the large industrial enterprises. At the same time, the post-Soviet period, which was during the decade of 1990s, was characterized by the sharp decline on finalization by the decline of finance support made by the government toward any AI research, but also in this decade, were created some important AI Russian private enterprises, one of which was, for example, Nanosemantica. It's Nanosemantics. It's a Russian AI firm, which is currently exists, and it is also one of the important private businesses which is trying to develop their own AI solutions. In the year 2004, Vladimir Putin is in his first presidential term, he visited India and was very inspired by the Indian tech parks, which were existed at this period in Bangalore. And Putin made an order to create 10 tech parks all over the Russian Federation, but in reality it was created only one in Kazan. The third stage, which can be titled slow and fragmented development, was during the period from 2006 until 2016. During this period, the real state interest on the development of AI policy and the AI, strategy of the Russia was really minimal and fragmented. The real achievement during this area was the creation of the Skolkovo Innovation Center, which is known as Russia's Silicon Valley. The center got a huge governmental support, and also within the center were created different centers oriented to the development of the Russia's analogs and Russia's model on AI instruments. But the real governmental interest and the real steps towards the creation its own governmental strategy on the development of AI was really slow and limited at that time. For example, the first Skolkovo AI conference, the special research event on the topic of development AI instruments, took place only in 2016. So it was in reality 6 years after the center was opened, and in the ranking of the world leaders in the AI development, Russia during the period of 2015-2018, Russia wasn't ranked among the top 10 countries, and the real practical interests of the government on the development of AI strategy revived only in the late 2010s. And the fourth stage, which was during the period from 2017 until 2019, was characterized by the formation of a full-fledged AI strategy of Russia. Some kind of starting point was the declaration made by the Putin in 2017, when he, in some conference, he said that the AI is the future, and whatever becomes the leader, in this field, this country will rule the world. So it became some kind of starting point for the real and practical development of the national regulation framework and the governmental strategy. In the Russian strategy for the development of the information society for the period from 2017 until the 2030, the AI area was identified as one of the priorities areas for the development of the government during this period. In the July 2017 was launched the program of the digital economy of the Russian Federation, where the AI was identified as one of the end-to-end digital technology, as was recognized as a priority area for the development of the governmental one of the priority area of the governmental support. And in January 2019, Putin instructed the government and the Russia's biggest and monopolist of the financial sector, Sberbank, to prepare the proposal of the national AI strategy. The proposal made by the Sberbank became the basis for the future governmental strategy on the development of AI. So in October 2019, finally, what was the adoption of the national strategy for the development of the AI through the year of 2030. So in this document were identified the state goals and objectives, basic terms and principles of AI policy, and the key sectors where these AI tools will be practically implemented, such as economy, social sphere, and security. And so the key goals of the first draft of the AI strategy, because this strategy, which was adopted in 2019, it was like the first version of the governmental strategy. So the key goals of the AI strategy in its first draft were the increased national welfare and quality of life, to ensure the national security and public order, and strengthening global competitiveness and secure leading international positions in AI. So, so a limitation and implementation of AI strategy. So, in fact, this first draft was very, how would say, in a draft in all the senses, because I mean, the set goals were defined in very broad, vague terms without any clear quantitative indicators of the progress of the real, how to say, passes towards the creation of the competitive AI area. So at the same time, which was important, apart the adoption of this strategy, were announced the so-called roadmap of the development of AI until the year of 2030s, and the federal project on AI. It's a federal project. It's like a special initiatives made by the federal government, which were controlled by the number of federal bodies. So in the fifth steps, which started from the special military operation in Ukraine, which took place in February 2022, and the fifth stage could be titled as adaptation to geopolitical changes. During this stage, the first draft of the strategy of on the development of AI in Russia was, how would say, rewritten, because in February 2024 were adopted the important amendments to Russia's national AI strategy, and the main governmental focus was made on the import substitution, development of the domestic AI software, and the expanded support of the Russian AI companies. So, I mean, I will just say very briefly about Russia's approach to the generative AI. In Russia, exists like a free main models on generative AI. The most popular is Yandex GPT, which was created by the leading IT company Yandex. So Yandex, with its products, is very popular within the whole post-Soviet space. For example, if you will, for example, visit Kazakhstan and will find the Uber. So the driver of the Uber in Kazakhstan, like in 99%, will be using the Yandex app for the navigator. So the Yandex GPT is like a Russian generative AI model, which is very competitive in the Russian written language, because Russian written language and the style of writing is very different. So this model is very competitive in this, like creating the text in the really good written Russian. The second generative AI is GigaChat, which was created by the Sberbank. It's less popular than the Yandex GPT. And the third AI model is Shepard, which is like a special app for the creation of the creative content, like videos and all of this. Apart of this, it's very important to note that the Chinese DeepSeek, which is a Chinese AI model, is very popular within the Russian-speaking population. And according to the latest survey made by the Mediologia survey group, which is like independent survey center, DeepSeek is a second popular tool within the Russian-speaking population, and in the other Russian models are lag behind this Chinese model. So I will just speak very shortly about the conceptual and legal framework of the Russian approach to AI in comparison with other countries. So if you are talking about the similarities between the Russia AI strategy and international models, it's very important to understand that the Russia strategy was adopted later, significantly later than comparing with the other countries, with the US, China, and first of all, Germany. And Russia's approach towards the creation and adoption of any strategy which are connected with digital technologies are trying to take as a model the similar strategies created in the countries of the European Union. So the Germany's strategy, which was adopted in 2018, it became one of the important model for the Russian government while the government was trying to create similar strategy for the Russian Federation. But I mean, if I would talk about the differences and similarities, the key similarities between Russia and the AI strategy and the international model lies in the similar planning horizons, which are like from 10 to 15 years. Almost all the strategies define the same priority areas. And Russia's approach also emphasizes the same as the Chinese approach, the achievement of the technical sovereignty. And regarding the differences of Russia's AI strategy compared to the similar strategies, Russia's approach emphasizes the training specialists, because the real market of the employees for the IT companies is really limited, and the military also in the strategy is very emphasized the military component of the application of the any AI tools. So, and I also have some information about international dimensions of Russian AI policy, but the next speaker will be talking about this in her report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina. That was wonderful. Our next speaker, and Simona, you realize you're standing between them and lunch, right? So just letting you know. My dear friend Simona Muradi is the Chief Operating Officer at Neural Agent, a dual-use AI startup active in the European defense ecosystem. Previously, she was the assistant to the CEO and responsible AI champ at Microsoft Germany. She is the author of Muslims in Putin's Russia, Discourse on Identity, Politics, and Security. This was published by Palgrave in 2017. Her research interests are religion, specifically Islam, in international relations, security, and geopolitics, focusing on Eurasia. She lives currently in Munich, Germany, where she has lectured at, I'm going to butcher this, Ludwig Maximilians University. She holds a PhD in International Relations from FIU and a degree in Russian language and literature from the University of Milan in Italy. And Simona will be talking to us today about Russia's state policies on AI within global dynamics. You're not using PowerPoints, right? Okay.
Even have a stopwatch so that I will not go long. Hello everybody, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here with such strong scholars. I will do my best to keep the level. Thank you very much to Professor Kozevich because she made a fantastic background information and a fantastic presentation about the situation of Russia, of AI in Russia. And I will take the testimony from her and just highlight a couple of aspects that I find particularly interesting in the Russian environment. So as Professor Kozevich said, Russia is rushing or is looking at AI with increased interest, especially in the last 10 years. And my argument is that Russia sees AI both as a challenge and as an opportunity. The challenge is, of course, the technological development challenge, is the challenge of creating the internal resources to develop and keep up with a very fast technological development at global level. The opportunity, as I hope I will show, is in the chance for Russia to use or leverage AI to position itself in the new global order as a leader alongside China and few others, mainly China, because Russia sees itself as a major new actor on the international scene. So the one important aspect that I see in Russians' approach to AI is the framing AI as a national security topic. It's a national security relevance because it fosters the economic development of the country, but it is also a potential threat that might be used by the state's enemies and has been used by what Russia sees as state's enemy, that are civil society actors, the revolutionary forces, or enemy countries that can use cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, deepfake, LLMs to deceive the Russian society, to spread false information, in worst case scenario, to threaten the Russian ecosystem and its technology. So by framing AI as a national security topic, Russia has constructed a legislative, normative structure that aims at containing this threat and keeping the control over its use. So the legislative body of Russia, which is still fragmented, as we have seen, and that's culminating with a strategy for in 2024, that's the latest revision, aims at channeling, controlling the development of AI. So, for example, on one side, there is an increase in state funds to training the students, to hackathons, to accelerators, to foster the new technologies. But also, there is a provision that prohibits private business from financing such activities. So there is an increase on one side of the funds. There is a decrease, though, or actually, there is an equal increase in state control over how these funds are used and what the capacities are going to be developed. For example, the document also lists a series of very specific actions that must be taken. How many data centers do we need to build? What kind of processors do we need to purchase or do we need to possibly produce in Russia? And so on, so on. What kind of professional figures do we need to train? How do we encourage the students or young people to take on these learning paths? Because we need people who know how to work in IT, in AI, and so on and so forth. So this is the main framework of AI in Russia, from the security point of view, but also from state development. So we see that this leitmotif is repeating itself in several speeches by Putin, by other state representatives. And try not to repeat myself with the others. As such, another very important aspect is that of technological sovereignty. So you heard many states, basically every state, is concerned with technological sovereignty, including European Union, including the United States. Russia is no exception. And the development, for example, of the LLMs, of GigaChat, and these in-house large language models reflects the will to keep the control of the outputs of these large language models. So there is a a great concern about deepfake initiatives or actions. I would like to point to an interesting paradox, if you want, that the military channel Zvezda has a new program, a satirical program, and which is completely AI generated from the beginning. Even the journalist is an avatar, right? So the claim of the program is that they will scan the daily news worldwide and spot those news that are overlooked by the human eye or by the human perception, put them together in a satirical way to make fun of what's happening in the world. The problem is that it's a mix of real footage and AI-generated footage. And you cannot distinguish them. There's been a research by experts belonging to Google, belonging to the 400, that's a website that screens international media. And this is very interesting because on one side it contradicts this paradox that the Russian state says, okay, deepfake is very dangerous, but then it uses it in a sort of classical, if you want, propaganda exercise. And also, it really points out at the level of sophistication of Russian technology in terms of LLMs and deepfake, so AI technologies. So the Russian approach, as we have seen to AI, has been modeled on the Russian approach, or the Soviet approach, and Russian approach to international telephone communication in Soviet times, to the use of internet and social media, to now use of AI. So the approach is that the state must control what's going on, the traffic within the country, outside of the country, within and inside of the country. What brings me also to another interesting aspect, because being security and sovereignty being interconnected, but then in the case of AI, the state needs technological capacity, so the capabilities to put into practice these purposes. Russia is looking to its partners, is looking outside, and is looking, as was mentioned, for example, to China. And with China, as you may or may not know, Russia is a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization together with China, founding members, and the purpose of the SCO is to preserve the sovereignty, the security of each member state, and reinforce the state sovereignty, national sovereignty of its member states. There is a cooperation, technological cooperation within the SCO, where Russia and China are both advocating, and this is an interesting model, within the new international order, they're advocating a open-sourced technology that everyone can get access to and profit from, but a state-regulated deployment, meaning, which is the opposite, if you want, of the US model, where you have a privately developed model, right? And so everyone, and so the Russia and China both, in their declarations, advocate for a sharing in the name of a new democracy against the unipolar world dominated by the US. In this new world order, it would be only fair and democratic that the states would share their technological knowledge, but then they decide how to implement it at state level. So Russia has founded the AI initiative network in this spirit, which is an international association with members of the BRICS and SCO. There's no Western member in this association. And the purpose of the association is to spread and help the partners in their technological development. There is an interesting analysis about the relationship of this Russian authorities or Russian state structures with their cybersecurity industry. So Russian cybersecurity companies have been very successful at the beginning of the 2000s. The most notable, the Kaspersky Lab, which has also sold software to the United States, and which have been banned by the United States and other Western countries because of this allegation of being potential spies, let's put it very simply, of the Russian government. So there is a research about the pressure that the Russian state authorities are increasingly putting on these companies to sell their software no longer to Western countries, but to the Russian partners countries, so to Central Asian countries, to members of the BRICS. Because that's the allegation, and I agree with this, there is a potential in having you controlling a key technology in another country. So we go back to the sovereignty part, right? Having the key technology, so being the one that that provides the content, provides the technical support, provides the updates, talking about software, right? So the updates, the upgrades, the security mechanisms. So my argument is that Russia cannot compete with China at the technological level. China is a league of its own together with the United States, but can find areas in which it's stronger in its partnerships. We were talking, we heard before about the post-Soviet space, right? That's China is strong, but Russia is stronger in that space. And it's building its own partnership. So Russia can take that part of the new global order and be the leader of that. Now, how long then the relationship between China and Russia on this level will go on, this is still to be seen. China, of course, has a big advantage in terms of technology on resources. But this is what's going on. And I still have something to say very quickly about the military use of AI by Russia. We often talk about LLMs, right, in terms of AI, but that's not the only version of AI that exists. There are other technological advancements that are not necessarily that popular, in the sense well known, but they are being used in warfare. Specifically, there's unfortunately a big open-air lab, if you want, in Ukraine, where the technological advancements of drones have a life cycle of a couple of weeks. So in every innovation in the drones or in the warfare is superseded by either party within 2 weeks, and then you have to restart. I heard also 1 week now. But anyway, so this opens up a lot of interesting, from our perspective, fields of research in what kind of technology is being deployed. Being I am in the same condition, I cannot research what's classified, what's not available. We can only infer from what we know that Russia has been developing a very strong AI capabilities of agentic AI. So autonomous vehicles, autonomous decision-making, machine learning, and all sort of this technology. I don't have time to go deep into this. So my conclusion is that, as I said, AI is for Russia both a challenge, a big challenge, technological, economical, social. It's also a big opportunity because it has given a big drive to its industrial technological development, has induced it to push a lot of resources into technological aspect that will trickle down, as it is usually the case, from defense into the civilian uses, and is attempting to leverage these capabilities to strengthen its international position in the new global world as a new leader for a community of states that are not the Western states, are not the US, not Europe, but has its own community. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Simona. That was fascinating, and we'll have more time during discussion to sort of dig deeper into the military applications of artificial intelligence and how they're being used in two theaters right now, both in Ukraine but also in the Middle East, in Yemen, in Gaza, and elsewhere. So with that, I think we have a generous amount of time to take a lunch break. We have over 2 hours, 2 hours and 7 minutes to be exact. So let's break for lunch and come back here at 1:50. Okay, so let's make it 1:50. So let's get back here at 1:50, and we'll have 5 more presentations for the afternoon session. And following that, we'll have about an hour and a half of discussion. And we'll hopefully conclude the conference at around 5:30. So enjoy your lunch break. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully you all had an amazing lunch break and got to enjoy some of the scenery on our beautiful campus. A beautiful day as well, weather-wise, so we're very happy about that. So we will go ahead and start right into the second portion of today's conference. Our upcoming speakers that will be starting us off after our lunch break will be Mohammed Aslami and Ibrahim Al-Marashi. Unfortunately, Mohammed Aslami could not make it here today, so Ibrahim Al-Marashi will be doing the presentation. Ibrahim Al-Marashi is Associate Professor of History at California State University, San Marcos, and a board member of the International Security and Conflict Resolution Program at San Diego State University. He is also an invited professor at John Cabot University in Rome, the Catholic University of Milan, the School of Humanities at IE University in Madrid, and the Department of Visual Arts at UC San Diego. His works include Iraq's Armed Forces and Analytical History, 2008, The Modern History of Iraq, 2016, and A Concise History of the Middle East, 2024, all published by Routledge. Al-Marashi will be talking today about AI-driven arm races in the Middle East, implications for international security. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Al-Marashi. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. The paper I'm giving today is written by Mohammed Aslami and myself. There is a tension in this paper. It's not because Professor Aslami is Iranian and I'm Iraqi. It's not for that reason. I am a historian and he's a political scientist. And what you're going to see in this presentation is what happens when you have these two disciplines come together, even though there might appear to be tensions, especially dealing with a subject that's so forward-looking. But nevertheless, as the historian, I know it's after lunch, so I'm going to do something unusual, and that's show you a video. Take time out of my presentation to show you a video in order to bring you back to the past. This video, I want you to imagine, it's February 2003. We're 1 month away from the Iraq War. And just look at an embarrassing episode that happened in the history of intelligence. So if I could just cue up the video. Imagine it's February 2003. Some of you probably weren't even born then. But let's go back, have a blast from the past. It's Channel 4 News in the UK. Go ahead.
The government's carefully coordinated propaganda offensive took an embarrassing hit tonight after Downing Street was accused of plagiarism. The target is an intelligence dossier released on Monday and heralded by none other than US Secretary of State Colin Powell at the United Nations yesterday. Channel 4 News has learned that the bulk of this 19-page document was copied from 3 different articles, one written by a graduate student. Our defence specialist Julian Rush has the details.
I will try to On Monday, the day before the US Secretary of State Colin Powell addressed the UN, Downing Street published its latest paper on Iraq. It gives the impression of being an up-to-the-minute, intelligence-based analysis, and Mr. Powell was fulsome in his praise.
I would call my colleagues' attention to the fine paper that the United Kingdom distributed yesterday, which describes in exquisite detail Iraqi deception activities.
Published on the Number 10 website and called Iraq, its infrastructure of concealment, deception and intimidation, it outlines the structure of Saddam's intelligence organizations. But it made familiar reading to a Cambridge academic.
Many of the words and phrases that it used I recalled from another context. So I searched around the other articles that I'd read on Iraq's organisations, its military and security organisations, and realised that large sections of the British government's dossier were actually copied.
Copied from here, an article last September in a small journal, the Middle East Review of International Affairs. Its author, Ibrahim Al-Marashi, a postgraduate student from Monterey in California.
The document, the British government dossier, is 19 pages long. Most of pages 6 to 16 are copied directly from that document.
Word for word?
Word for word. Even the grammatical errors and the typographical mistakes are copied.
Large sections do indeed appear verbatim. This, for example, 6 paragraphs long on Saddam's special security organisation. The exact same words are in the Californian student's paper. Of military intelligence, Al-Marashi writes, the head of military intelligence generally did not have to be a relative of Saddam's immediate family nor a Tikriti. Saddam appointed Sabir Abdelaziz al-Duri as head. Note the comma after appointed. Downing Street paraphrases the first sentence, but the second is cut and pasted, complete with the same grammatical error. Academics take plagiarism seriously. It's intellectual theft. Downing Street didn't ask for permission to reproduce the work, which is not current, but actually an historical analysis of the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait before the last Gulf War.
He's writing his PhD thesis on the operation of Iraqi forces inside Kuwait, and his primary source of information is documents captured from the Iraqi government in 1991. The information, therefore, that he is using is 12 years old, and he acknowledges this in his article. The British government, when it transplants that information into its own dossier, does not make that acknowledgement. So it is presented as current information about Iraq's current security services, when really the information that it is using are some 12 years old.
Downing Street copied from 2 other articles from the magazine Jane's Intelligence Review. Its editor is happy to be quoted, less happy at the selective way some parts were edited.
What you need to look at is exactly how it's been compiled and collated. And the questions that you're asking about, has certain things been selected for spin, are right questions to be asked.
In several places, Downing Street edits the originals to make more sinister reading. Number 10 says the main intelligence agency is spying on foreign embassies in Iraq. The original read monitoring foreign embassies in Iraq. And the provocative role of supporting terrorist organisations in hostile regimes is weaker in the originals, aiding opposition groups in hostile regimes.
Part of the article.
And an original phrase describing a group made up of bullies and country bumpkins is in Number 10's version just bullies. Editing to make Saddam's apparatus look more terrifying, raising questions about the way Number 10 is spinning the justification for war.
Julian Rush, well, I called Downing Street for reaction. No minister was available, and intriguingly, actually the Tory opposition didn't want to talk about it either. Downing Street offered this statement. Our report was put together by a range of government officials. The report makes this clear. The contents were drawn from a number of sources, including intelligence material. First paragraph only, I gather. The report does not identify or credit any sources, nor does it claim exclusivity on its contents. We consider the text as published accurate. The Downing Street spokesman would not be drawn on whether this included the typos and spelling mistakes.
If you could go, and if you want to learn more, you saw a link to my TED Talk right there. But why did I open with that video? Because in the beginning, Professor Mesbahi talked about the how do I tell the difference between authenticity and plagiarism? Okay, so when we get to the issue of artificial intelligence, we're talking about a basically content generator that on some level is inherently based on plagiarism, just in small parts. This was an example. This was not a real intelligence report. It was fake. One could say it was a deep fake in that it was plagiarized from three different academic sources. It was internet-enabled, but not artificially intelligence-enabled. And I joke, why did I stress 2003? Because in 2023, if the British government needed to justify a war, they would have avoided this embarrassment by using ChatGPT and, of course, Grammarly to fix the common mistakes. Okay. Now, why is this crucial today? I want you to think how much of the 2025 war in Iran was justified by intelligence reports. Okay, and this is what I need you to then question. Okay, if the 2003 intelligence reports were based on material, okay, that were deliberately misrepresented for basically justifying military action. How much does this apply in 2025 with Iran? And then, of course, with the intelligence reports that justify military action against Venezuela. Okay. Remember, the 1898 Spanish-American War was started based on a doctored image in front of all the newspapers in the U.S. owned by the Hearst organization of the USS Maine blowing up and having all these American bodies being strewn through the air. In the age of AI, what could start a war against Venezuela, for example? This is the realm of deep fakes. So when we talk about qualitative arms races in the Middle East, okay, what do we mean is that the war between Israel and Iran didn't involve just conventional weapons, okay, which are quantitative, which you can count. They were also qualitative arms, okay, and these were the deep fakes used by both sides that were creating not a reality but a form of hyper-reality. These are going to be the next AI-enabled weapons going forward. So let's begin. I'm going to talk around my paper with the images. So here's the literature review. RMA is what's referred to in history as revolution in military affairs. Anything from the musket to the cruise missile. Okay, and we begin. Now, this is where I come in as a historian. To have a revolution in military affairs, you have to discuss what is disruptive in the history of military innovation. By definition, this buzzword we use, innovation. What innovates or what makes something new can only be appreciated by looking back at the past and seeing what is being disruptive. And of course, the great question is artificial intelligence one of these disruptive military innovations that will cause a revolution in military affairs? We argue yes, okay, but with some qualifications. If you look at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, you notice that they have an entire section on disruptive technologies, for example. And hi, Mark, welcome. If you want, you could, do you want to, oh, there's an empty seat there. I forgot, yes, I will eventually have to sit down, otherwise I'll give you my chair. And we tend to forget, when we're looking at artificial intelligence, we often look at the way it involves, not only, when I give an example of deepfakes, I would argue these are non-conventional weapons, but let's not forget of the category that's called weapons of mass destruction. And I use the example here of how a nerve agent like sarin could be more easily synthesized with the help of an artificial intelligence aid. But, that's one book in the literature. And the next book, of course, I'm going to highlight is going to come from one of our speakers in the afternoon. And this is the edited volume by Arshin Muqaddam, Adib, Artificial Intelligence and International Security, Redefining Arms Race and Contemporary Warfare. And in this case, Professor Islami and I, what we looked at, and it tells you a lot that it took 4 authors to look at the way AI will affect nuclear arms races. Okay, because there's 4 of us, each with a different specialty. I, the historian, Islami, the political scientist, Alessandro Russo, somebody who really knows the AI really well. Okay, to really project into the future of how will AI affect nuclear proliferation in the region. So here I'm talking about the literature. Now, I'll get to the arguments, and I'm the one who actually takes a constructivist argument. So obviously, when we talk about an arms race, this involves the realist school of international relation and the classical security dilemma. If one actor gets it, surely the next actor in the region has to get it, and due to the security dilemma.
I and Islami also argue using a constructivist modification of Wendt's argument, anarchy is what states make of it. AI is entering an anarchic realm, and I argue AI anarchy is ultimately what states make of it. So our core argument is, we argue that the Middle East, a region of middle powers, no pun intended, has strategic culture shaped by a history of negative sovereignty. And it's quite amazing how often throughout this day the term sovereignty has been invoked. This term that comes from the Westphalian era that has evolved since 1648, not created, but evolved. It's quite amazing how we're still sticking to this term that came from the end of the 30 Years' War and basically looking at it as how AI as a variable will shape this notion of sovereignty. Nevertheless, superpowers vying for regional dominance with 3 Gulf Wars, technically if you count June 2025, that was the 4th Gulf War, and several Arab-Israeli wars since 1948 that continued to the present. And then we also conclude with basically international humanitarian law has yet to catch up to basically acts of political violence that involve a non-human in the decision-making process. So I'll get to my argument. And actually, this should go afterwards. And if I were to write the abstract, it kind of surprised me. You know, of course, when you write the abstract, you have to have the key words underneath. And it's the key words are all more or less hybrid ontologies, hybrid words. And in that hybridity, we see the transformation of this field. Okay. Whether AI is going to be a bubble or not, or transform warfare, the fact that we have to transform existing concepts to look at artificial intelligence, I find it hard to think of any other revolution in military affairs that does this. Okay. So when we talk about it's AI-enabled security dilemmas, okay. When we speak of epistemic insecurity, what do I mean by epistemology? Well, maybe this is a good place to go to this quote. Cyberspace is a consensual hallucination because in a lot of realms, AI is operating in cyberspace. And we tend to forget the word cyberspace was actually invented by a science fiction author. William Gibson in his work Neuromancer in 1983. So this is one of the few domains now in warfare that's not air, sea, and land. It's basically an argument, it's a figment of our imagination. Okay. Nevertheless, cyberspace, and I found it quite interesting when he described it as a consensual hallucination, because what I mean by epistemic insecurity is this phenomena of, let's say, AI hallucinations. Would a country go to war based on an AI hallucination? I know it's outrageous, but here's the science fiction coming into this, the scenario of many films. And if you want to talk about an AI hallucination, let's not forget in 1983 how close the world came to ending when a Soviet commander in a missile silo basically had indication that 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles were coming to the Soviet Union. His immediate protocol was to launch the missiles in his silo. But what did he do? He trusted his gut instinct and asked why, if the US was going to take us out in a nuclear strike, they would only launch 5 missiles. It was a hallucination. In this case, it was this Soviet satellite mistaking sunbeams reflecting off a cloud as ballistic missile launches. Had he launched those missiles, nevertheless, based on those indications, World War III would have begun. What if an AI hallucination was in that process, right? During that process? Would the human in the loop have been able to stop the road towards Armageddon? But here we look at global digital hierarchies now, informational sovereignty, data sovereignty dilemmas, the militarization or the securitization of data, algorithmic opacity, algorithmic escalation. And then I add just a couple of other terms, depending on, I know this is for publication, but in this hypothetical journal article, if this went into the intelligence literature, okay, it's quite interesting because the entire field of intelligence studies is based, when I say intelligence, espionage studies, it's based on 2 domains, whether it's human intelligence, what the spies gather on the ground, or signals intelligence, what the satellite picks up from our space. Okay? And it's quite interesting that AI more or less blends the 2. Okay? AI in terms is more or less generated from humans' intelligence, but it's also something that's generated from signals intelligence. And then I throw in Arabic word, the mukhabarat.
Okay, and the mukhabarat, if we tend to forget, is the catch-all Arabic term for the secret spy agencies that monitor foreign and domestic threats. But as we argue, as AI enters these Middle Eastern states, AI might be used to monitor against foreign threats and prepare against them, but the boundary between them and domestic espionage is very much blurred, just as the mukhabarat agencies in the Middle East are. If you remember, what was the old word for SAVAK, right? It was Sazemune Ettalat, Be'emniat Kashbar. Okay, and after 79, you just replace the K to Mihan, right? But the word etalat is basically also the word for communication. And let's not forget, what is AI ultimately? Mukhabarat is just the word to spread news. Okay. And this is what AI does, is these are just realms of communication, and you have these state agencies that are in charge of maintaining this information. How will AI then help them collecting information on the ground in the states that they're supposed to protect? Okay, that's just based on the keywords. Okay. So when we look at now the arms races in the Middle East, we saw our first examples with the AI deepfakes of the Israel-Iran war. The value of these weapons were how many clicks they gathered and how fast they were able to reproduce the literal definition of a meme. This is how the term meme entered our vocabulary. And when we talk about, let's say, showing destructions of Tel Aviv after an Iranian missile attack, that was an AI deepfake. It garnered more than 1 million views. They were reproduced by state agencies. The same with Israeli state agencies reproducing a deepfake of a missile hitting an Iranian intersection in Tehran, another deepfake that garnered more than 1 million views. Now, here we are at the present. Okay. Nuclear experts say mixing AI and nuclear weapons is inevitable. So what we're trying to do then is more or less look at, if this is the case, not only are we going to have to look at models of proliferation in the Middle East, right? We're looking at a new type of proliferation. How will states that proliferate with artificial intelligence spark other types of arms races? The conventional knowledge is that if Iran were to proliferate, okay, that's going to lead to an immediate reaction to Saudi Arabia, okay? But how much time do I have? I'm not keeping track. I should have said the time. I was hoping one of you would. Is anyone keeping track of my time? I think I am over time. That's what I thought. I was waiting, and now I'm winging it. Anyway, if only, I throw this as a joke here, because, I mean, this is the traditional model of proliferation, was that the minute the Americans got the atomic bomb, the Russians had to have it. So we're operating under this traditional model of proliferation. But now let me end with my conclusion then, if time is over. Okay, here we go. The widespread availability of AI-enabled drones and cyber tools has already eroded the distinction between state and non-military capacity. Beyond institutional reform, AI militarization in the Middle East raises broader ethical questions about the relationship between technology, governance, and human security. The pursuit of algorithmic power risks reinforcing authoritarian control, deepening surveillance, and exacerbating regional inequalities without ethical constraints. AI could entrench patterns of coercion and repression under the guise of modernization, the meta-argument of our conference. Okay. The security dilemma, always intense in the Middle East, is thus rendered more acute by opaque systems that blur the lines between offensive and defensive intentions. Now, by situating AI within the debates on technological determinism and strategic agency, this article also shows that Middle Eastern states are not passive recipients of global innovation. Instead, they strategically interpret, adapt, and embed AI technologies according to domestic political economies, regime priorities, and national security doctrines. Empirically, the paper highlighted how regional actors from Israel's algorithmic intelligence fusion to Gulf states' modernization agendas and Iran and Turkey's asymmetric innovation have incorporated AI into divergent but intersecting military trajectories. Thank you. Okay. And I think we go to, yes, I'll just leave that there for the next person. Sorry, no, yes, there we go, thank you. Oops, excuse me.
much.
My pleasure.
Very interesting presentation. I look forward to encompassing it into our roundtable discussion. So I'll go ahead and move on to introducing the next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Mohammed Humayun Vash, who I hope you all are already familiar with. Dr. Humayun Vash holds a PhD in International Relations from Florida International University and is the founding director of the Jaffer Institute for Interfaith Dialogue and Education at Miami-Dade College. He lectures in international relations at the University of Miami, as well as right here at FIU, and is the author of Iran and the Nuclear Question, History and Evolutionary Trajectory, Routledge 2017. His current research explores the geopolitical and ethical implications of artificial intelligence, algorithmic governance, and digital sovereignty in the global south, with emphasis on the Muslim world. He is also a good friend and colleague of mine, and so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Humayun Vash, who will be talking today on the AI arms race in the GCC.
Thank you, Mohammed. So this is some preliminary findings. I'm still working on sort of putting it into its final shape. So what's going on in the GCC is very interesting. What you see is a little bit of like spaghetti test. They're just throwing everything against the wall and see what sticks. I think that's the overall theme in regards to the GCC. The conventional wisdom in the region is that the Gulf or the Persian Gulf is a new center of gravity in the global artificial intelligence order, and I'll critique that proposition. But if you look at some numbers, since 2017, the GCC has gone through a very profound technological revolution in a sense. Because, you know, these were countries that were primarily consumers of imported digital systems, but now that is shifting because the region is emerging as architects, investors, and geopolitical brokers even in the global AI landscape. In terms of investment, there is around $40 to $50 billion of AI-focused investment projected by 2030. So those are crazy numbers, even by US metrics. And the ultimate objective is that the region is going to turn to the center of global technological competition. But crucially, AI in the Persian Gulf region is not simply a development story. There are strategic and civilizational ambitions behind it. And the ultimate goal is that this is going to simultaneously reconfigure governance, power projection, sovereignty, and even regional order. So AI within the GCC has a couple of functions. It's an instrument of regime durability, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. It's a lever of autonomy against the backdrop of intensifying US-China rivalry in the region. It's a pathway to post-oil transformation. At least this is what you hear from the region with Saudi Vision 2030. You have UAE Centennial 2071. This will be the 100 years anniversary of the creation of the United Arab Emirates. And you have Qatar Vision 2030. It's also a tool for soft power. The region is trying to brand itself as a global convening hub for digital futures. And it's also functions as a foundation for emergent security complexes. So you have predictive governance that's going on pretty hot right now in the region. You have different types of unmanned systems that are being developed in the system in the region. You have smart borders, smart cities, and AI-enabled command and control systems. So it looks kind of futuristic in a way. The regional trends and the GCC's strategic logic, as far as I could identify, are as follows. Number one, it has to do with techno-sovereignty and post-hydrocarbon statecraft. So AI is being used for post-oil economic diversification. Its goal is to reduce dependence on Western security guarantees. Regional deterrence vis-a-vis Iran is part of that conversation in the region, and the national branding as future-oriented digital hubs. So in this landscape, you have data, cloud infrastructure, computational capacity becoming vital instruments of state power. The second macro trend in the region is AI as an authoritarian infrastructure. So the Gulf's AI revolution is deeply intertwined with experiments in digital authoritarian governance that is characterized by predictive policing algorithms. If you go to Dubai these days, you see this in kind of full force. You have integrated biometric identity systems. You go through any airport in the GCC, you see this happening. In Dubai, you have this project, AI-enabled surveillance system called Oyun, which in Arabic means eyes. And this is Dubai Police's AI surveillance system. Its equivalent in Abu Dhabi is called Falcon Eye, also known as Citywide Surveillance System. And it's a very comprehensive AI-enhanced security and monitoring platform. You also have smart city monitoring architectures. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this new smart city called NEOM. You also have the Masdar city, which is close to Abu Dhabi, and it's one of the most ambitious global projects in sustainable urbanism, clean tech innovation, and AI integrated planning. And Qatar, not to fall behind, has also its own smart city called Lusail, which is just north of Doha, the capital of Qatar. And it's a flagship, smart city mega project, and one of the most technologically advanced urban environments in the Middle East. And you also have population analytics and behavioral modeling that the GCC is working on. The third macro trend has to do with GCC-China tech convergence. And this is a very interesting story because while the region is maintaining robust military ties with the United States, it's simultaneously increasing reliance on Chinese digital ecosystems. And some examples are Huawei and its use of cloud and telecom infrastructure in the region. This is a company that is essentially sanctioned and banned by the United States and a bunch of other Western countries. You also have Hikvision and Dahua. These are major players in China that focus on surveillance systems. You have Chinese facial recognition algorithms that are being used in the GCC. And you also have a bunch of data localization agreements in place between the GCC and the Chinese government. So this kind of creates a dual dependency structure where the GCC imports its security from the United States while importing a lot of its digital infrastructure from China. And because of this kind of triangular relationship between the GCC, China, and the United States, the Gulf has become a testing ground for Sino-American techno-geopolitical competitions. And states say that they're practicing strategic hedging, and I'll have some critiques of this idea later on. The fourth macro trend is GCC's arms race dynamics. So you have AI competition unfolding across several fronts. You have investment rivalries going on between different sovereign wealth funds in the region. You some of the big players are all obviously the PIF, which is the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. Its assets, I think, are close to $1 trillion right now. And the PIF is essentially the financial engine of Saudi Arabia's Vision 23 project. Its equivalent in Dubai, in the UAE, I should say, is Mubadala, the Mubadala Investment Company, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi, and its assets are close to $300 billion. And the goal of Mubadala is to turn Abu Dhabi into a global hub for advanced technology, artificial intelligence, and future industries. Then Qatar has its own sovereign wealth fund called Qatar Investment Authority, whose assets are estimated at around $500 billion. And the QIA, the Qatar Investment Authority, is the financial backbone of Qatar's domestic development model. You also have competition across these three major players, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, when it comes to cloud hegemony. So, for example, you have G42 in the UAE, you have Aramco Cloud in Saudi Arabia, and Azure Qatar competing to dominate regional infrastructure. You have talent capture strategies. Right now in the UAE, you have the AI visa, which is an entirely new category of visa. You have elite universities popping up left and right in the region, and national AI academies that are just, proliferating all over. You also have geopolitical branding going on, and there's a little bit of this competition over branding, where states host global summits and partner with institutions like MIT, Stanford, and Tsinghua University from China. But if we were to get a little bit more granular and look at the picture country by country, I think the United Arab Emirates is perhaps the most aggressive, assertive actor in terms of incorporating this new technology. And the United Arab Emirates has the so-called first mover advantage and is the most comprehensive AI actor in the region. Institutional ecosystem is developing very fast. The UAE is the first country, I think still the only country in the world, that has actually a Ministry of Artificial Intelligence that was established in 2017. You have a major university, Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, that was established in 2019 in Abu Dhabi, and it's the world's first graduate level university dedicated exclusively to artificial intelligence. You have G42, as I mentioned, which is a sovereign digital champion whose platform spans biotech, cloud, and defense. And you have other companies like ADQ, and ADQ is a state-owned holding company, which is a central pillar of the UAE's domestic economic transformation agenda. You have Mubadala that I talked about, and you have the proliferation of edge technologies trying to reinforce civil-military integration in the United Arab Emirates. So to sum it up about the United Arab Emirates, where Mubadala provides global technological depth and G42 produces AI capabilities, ADQ ensures the UAE's internal economic architecture is modernized, data-rich, and AI-ready. So again, the word on the street in Dubai is that the UAE will become the Silicon Valley and Pentagon of the Arab world put together. We'll see. Now, Saudi Arabia is a relatively newer player in that ecosystem. The Saudis have taken a more of an aggressive approach towards mega projects. And the institutional backbone of this enterprise is supported by Saudi Data and AI Authority, which is core to Saudi Arabia's AI-centric statecraft. It has major investments in PIF-driven AI mega projects. It has multiple partnerships with big players like IBM, Google Cloud, and Alibaba. And NEOM is, I think, the poster child of what the Saudis are trying to do. You know, this is a post-human AI city, if you will. And it's envisioned as a fully integrated AI organism. It features things like neural network, urban design, circular AI mobility systems, smart grids and energy optimization, and totalizing digital, surveillance ecosystems. So we'll see. I think a lot of what happens with Saudi Arabia will pivot around the future of NEOM, which as of right now is not looking very promising. I think the Saudis might have just, bitten more than they could chew. And then you have Qatar. The Qataris are always a little bit more measured. They take their time. They just, don't get ahead of themselves. And their approach towards AI and cyber is no exception. So in Qatar, you have a bunch of universities and institutions that are doing this work. You have primarily Qatar Computing Research Institute, which is one of the main pillars of Qatar's AI cybersecurity and digital governance ecosystem. You also have a new university, relatively new university in Qatar, Hamad bin Khalifa University, which is Qatar's flagship research university and AI knowledge hub. And Qatar overall is focused on a national AI strategy that is tied to health, healthcare, finance, and cybersecurity, and that's for the most part their focus. But the Qataris think that they have certain strategic advantages, like high cybersecurity readiness, deep investment in research universities, and experience hosting AI-driven global security operations, like the World Cup of 2022 was one of them. So Qataris say that they want to become the AI Switzerland of the Middle East. And then you have other smaller players in the region, like Oman. Oman's AI strategy is more geared towards sustainability-oriented priorities. And then you have Bahrain. Bahrain is trying to build itself as the fintech hub of the GCC. So we have a lot of AI-enabled fintech companies that are operating out of Bahrain. And Kuwait is perhaps the latest comer onto the scene, and they're mostly focused on e-government innovation and using AI in energy management and some urban mobility systems. Now, against that background, I also have some critiques of what's going on. Do I have 5 minutes, Mohammed? 5-ish? Okay, all right. I think I can wrap it up in 5 minutes. So I'll just go through the bullet points that I have written in terms of the critiques of what's going on. So number one critique is whether what's going on in the GCC is digital authoritarianism disguised as progress. And I think there's a lot of evidence to support this proposition, because at its core, the GCC AI surge is not driven by science or ethics or long-term societal benefit. It is driven by regime durability, the desire to surveil, to preempt, to engineer, and discipline societies before dissent materializes. And they learned this the hard way during the Arab Spring of the 2010s. So the region's flagship projects, if you think about them, like the Falcon Eye in Abu Dhabi, or Yun, NEOM, these are, like I said, totalizing surveillance grids. And even if you look at Lusail's biometric governance, these are not experiments in smart living. They're experiments in algorithmic authoritarianism, trying to embed coercive capacity into the urban fabric itself. So in a sense, you could make the argument that if the Gulf was the birthplace of petro-authoritarianism, now it's becoming the laboratory of algorithmic authoritarianism. The second critique that you might raise about the GCC is that there is this vision of grandiosity without governance. There is a planning reality gap, and I think NEOM symbolizes this gap. So, the GCC's AI agenda, I think, is swollen with too much hyperbole going on. Like the world's first fully AI city, NEOM, generative AI capitals, trillion-dollar digital transformation, national cloud promising absolute sovereignty. But these ambitions clash with stubborn factual realities on the ground, because these are countries that have small populations, they have narrow knowledge economies, they have dependence, a lot of dependence on foreign talent, they have extreme data centralization, they have a lot of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and they have this chronic condition of over-promising in mega projects. So I don't know, maybe the region suffers from governance inflation, the belief that announcing a grand project is equivalent to actually building it. And so behind the spectacles of AI summits and neon megacities, I think lies a quieter truth, which is the Gulf imports technology faster than it could domesticate capacity. The third critique I have is that AI is being used as geopolitical hedging and not innovation. So GCC states, despite everything they say publicly, these are not primarily, innovating in AI. They're purchasing leverage in a fractured global ecosystem. So, and I mentioned the region's dual dependency problem, importing security from the United States and infrastructure from China. So this produces a very fragile equilibrium where Gulf states, host U.S. air bases, run Huawei networks, buy American weapons, test Chinese surveillance systems. And far from digital sovereignty, this is digital dependency with multiple landlords. So, and then the fourth critique, and I'll have one more and I'll finish, is the AI race as an intra-GCC contest for prestige. So this is less a race to the future and more a race for branding, countries. So it's a regional status game wrapped in the language of innovation. And the financial fire hose, that those $50 billion, I think obscures a deeper truth, that money by itself cannot algorithmically manufacture creativity. It cannot, mega projects cannot by themselves engineer a knowledge society overnight. And then finally, you have militarization that's happening behind the curtain. The GCC initiatives are quietly, but sometimes not so quietly, militarizing. So you have AI-enabled drone swarms, you have autonomous maritime patrols right now, you have algorithmic early warning systems, cyber warfare platforms, biometric population control, and regional ISR integration. So the rhetoric of efficiency and smart governance conceals the deeper logic, which is AI is becoming the operating system of the Gulf's next generation security states. And remember, this is not accidental, this weaponization of AI in the GCC. It's actually doctrinal, and it's a longer-term trend. So my final thought, which is more of a warning, is that the question of whether a political order built on surveillance, hierarchy, and imported expertise truly create a sustainable and fair AI future. And I think right now the answer is a compelling no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Certainly an interesting presentation, as the Gulf has become a region of grand mega projects, and AI is certainly no different as the next frontier of mega projects. All right, moving on, our next speaker will be Abdullah Amran. Abdullah Amran is a PhD candidate in Middle Eastern languages and cultures at Indiana University Bloomington, whose interdisciplinary research explores the intersection between technological advancement and Islamic legal studies. He has published peer-reviewed articles such as Knowledge Disembodied from Paper to Digital Media in Cyber Orient 2020, and Thus Spoke a Couple, a corpus-based content analysis of spousal duties fatwas in the Journal of Digital Islamicate Research in 2024. Professionally, he's worked as a trainer of AI models and is a senior translator in both Arabic and English for 11 years and a project manager for editorial and translation roles. Today, Abdullah Amran will be talking to us about AI-driven intra-Muslim armed conflicts, crafting ethical frameworks to protect privacy and ensure security. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Amran.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm not a political scientist, and I'm going to say it's quite different, but it's been a pleasure listening to everybody over here today. Thank you so much for your great presentations. My presentation today is mainly on the AI ethics side, and it's more focused on the inner workings of the training data sets, which is my recent interest. Okay, that's right. Okay, how do you go back? Got you. So my presentation today is composed of 3 parts. The first one is Islamic law framework for intra-Muslim conflict. The second is anthropological contribution to fine-grain this framework. And lastly, governance proposal grounded in AI safety literature. It proposes ways to integrate privacy safeguards into AI systems used in intra-Muslim conflict, if they will be used. Hopefully they're not. But anyway, classical Islamic legal texts rarely address privacy in conflict, if any, because internal conflicts historically occurred through direct face-to-face confrontation. Modern AI-driven surveillance, however, transformed conflict by enabling remote identification, profiling, and targeting, often without accountability. In this new landscape, privacy becomes a moral imperative, understood as the right to concealment and sanctity, essential for preventing wrongful harm when machines can mislabel individuals as threats. Yet current AI systems flatten people and communities into simplified categories, and which amplifies bias and produces dangerous misinterpretations. To address this, the presentation argues not for more invasive data collection, but for anthropologically informed evaluation benchmarks. Rather than training models as sensitive cultural data, and we use anthropological insights to audit and stress test the system to ensure and preserve cultural nuance and reduce harm. By bringing together Islamic ethical principles, AI safety engineering, and anthropological insight, it outlines a pathway for building AI systems that enforce constraints to respect human dignity and avoid catastrophic misclassification in conflict settings. The argument today is I'm proposing a framework that aims to resolve the socio-technical and alignment problem. It is not merely a matter of adding ethical guidelines to AI. It requires a fundamental rebuild based on 3 principles. First one is creating a legal taxonomy, which correctly categorizes the different types of conflict and actors involved to provide clear logic for when surveillance is permissible versus prohibited. The second one is contextual safety layers, which utilize insight from anthropology to define boundary conditions. And instead of demanding that AI understands deep culture, which requires invasive data, we use anthropology to teach the system what it cannot see and where it must not operate. The third one is system safety or systematic safety, which embeds dynamic privacy protocols and multiple layers of defense directly into the code to prevent failure. The central argument today is privacy cannot be a static on-off switch. It must be a dynamic. The level of state surveillance must shift away when the system detects specific technically verified triggers that move an actor from one legal category to another, which requires human validation in order to escalate the level of the threat. Islamic law provides rights and protections for certain groups. Unlike the terrorist who wages a war on society itself, a rebel, on the other hand, is granted a unique set of inviolable rights. The first is immunity from execution. They cannot be killed once captured. Property protection. Their assets cannot be seized. Rights to return. The goal is to reintegrate them, not to punish them. The rationale being, why does the law grant these rights? Because of the presence of a plausible political interpretation, the law recognizes that the rebel is not a criminal seeking chaos, but a citizen seeking change. They are in error, but they remain within the protection of the state. The privacy connection here, in this framework, privacy is how we enforce these rights. If an AI permanently unmasks, tracks, and profiles political dissenters, it treats them in the same way it treats a terrorist. It strips them of the immunity the law guarantees. Therefore, the proposal treats the privacy of the rebel as a legal sanctuary unless the specific red line of indiscriminate violence is crossed. The AI is architecturally forbidden from violating this shield. Then the question becomes, what warrants our worry? When the previous misclassification is applied to human conflict, it results in what is called category collapse. Yes, category collapse, which is a statistical failure where distinct legal identities are flattened into a single vector of risk because the system relies on thin data, that they are metadata, location binges, and network connections. It cannot distinguish between proximity and participation. A protester standing near a militant is statistically similar to a co-combatant. The machine cannot distinguish a dissenter or a criminal or a terrorist, but bundles them into a single target. This obviously erases the legal distinction that protects innocent life. A stark example came in April 2024, when with revelations about the Lavender AI system used in Gaza. Lavender possessed huge amounts of intelligence, but relied on probabilistic behavioral cues, such as being in a WhatsApp group, changing phones, or simply being a military-aged male. It assigned each person a score from 1 to 100. A high score effectively turned someone into a target. Human oversight reportedly became a quick rubber stamp process lasting seconds. This reflects the failure of inductive AI. It detects correlation but cannot understand context. To address these failures, AI systems must embed key distinction from the Islamic legal tradition. These three categories of actors must be identified. First, the principled dissenter, which are groups with plausible political grievances. They are not criminals, and their internal discussions remain protected. Spying on them is prohibited. Agents of indiscriminate harm or terrorists. Those involved in terrorism or spreading fear, their actions forfeit certain privacy protections to safeguard the public. And the last is the ordinary criminals, which are individuals engaged in private wrongdoing. Here, the presumption of innocence is at its strongest case, and predictive surveillance should be sharply limited. Recent failures show that AI collapses cultural meaning into harmful stereotypes. In 2023, WhatsApp's sticker generator turned a prompt for a Palestinian boy into images of armed children, while an Israeli boy appeared playing soccer, which is a bias learned from the data, not reality. Likewise, Meta's 2024 Oversight Board found that algorithms wrongly flagged the word shaheed or martyr as terrorist content, even though it is widely used to mourn civilians and victims of tragedy. By treating grief as extremism, the system committed structural injustice. These cases demonstrate how AI, without cultural understanding, misreads communities, confuses context with threat, and reinforces institutional bias. This brings us to the role of anthropology. Historically, engineers argue that to make AI smarter, we must train it on more cultural data. However, in conflict settings, gathering deep personal data on vulnerable populations effectively creates a surveillance archive, violating the very privacy we wish to protect. Therefore, we should use anthropology to train the model. We use it to red team the model. We do not use anthropology to train the model, we use it to red team the model. Red teaming the model is basically a safety practice where experts intentionally try to break the system to find its flaws before it goes live. In this framework, anthropologists create challenging cultural simulations, like a peaceful religious procession, and feed them into the AI in a secure lab. If the AI misclassifies the event as a threat, we catch the error offline. This allows us to fix cultural blind spots without ever exposing the live population to invasive surveillance. We use cultural knowledge to build better brakes, not a more invasive engine. Now, how do we operationalize this, to use governance terms and engineering terms? There's a very famous model in AI safety. It's called a Swiss cheese model of defense, which is, it prevents catastrophic failure. No single layer of defense is perfect. Each has holes. Therefore, we must stack multiple independent layers of defense to block the path to failure. As you can see here from the picture, there are multiple layers of protection. Each has holes, which are weaknesses in each layer, but the next layer is supposed to basically compensate for that weakness and make it up. So the first layer in this framework is a legal taxonomy, which is a hard-coded legal category to prevent the system from targeting protected groups. The second one is a contextual data, anthropological data checks for cultural nuance used specifically in benchmarking. The third layer is anomaly detection, or the edge cases. The system flags unusual patterns, like sudden mass flagging of a common term like Shahid, as a potential error, not a threat. The fourth layer, which is to evoke the human-in-the-loop narrative, a digital auditor with independent authority. This systematic approach encoded into a gatekeeper mechanism, but when data flows through this gate, how do we do that? To ensure safety, we must treat data differently based on the anthropological context. First, we have two types of data, public and visible data. This includes public speeches, forum posts, and overt movement in public spaces. The system analyzes this for social performance. Is this a poetry? Is this political debate? Or is this operational planning? You have to basically classify what kind of data there is. The second type of data is restricted private data. This includes domestic conversation, private messaging, and intimate metadata. Under this data filter, the data is blocked by default at the ingestion point. It only enters the system if a specific legal threshold of public harm is met. The main features of this gatekeeping system, it ensures maximum privacy. The first one is an inference barrier, which prevents AI from inferring private faults or personal data returns, where the personal data returns null. Basically, you don't allow the model to train itself or respond to by going to private information in order to give an answer. The second feature is protection shield. Activates for principal dissent, minimizes data and encrypts identity to protect lawful, political, or theological speech. The third one is targeted unlock, which applies only with verified evidence of indiscriminate harm. This is where privacy safeguards are relaxed to ensure security. In the case of terrorists, for example, this is one of the features that can be applied there. In essence, the gatekeeping mechanism balances safety, justice, and cultural nuance to ensure that dissent is protected while genuine threats are contained. The final one is the fail-safe, which is simply keeping a human in the loop becomes insufficient. Without structure, operators often become rubber stamps for the machine's output, as we see in the Lavender case. To counter this, we introduce the auditor as a distinct, independent authority. They do not just watch the screen; they review the explainable audit trail. It's basically an oversight officer that can come from the outside and judge the model's performance. Their role is to verify that the system did not just find a particular correlation, but actually satisfied the rigorous legal anthropological criteria required for the action. However, we should know that normal AI tries to be as accurate as possible, and it cheats to get there, which is one of the ways that models do with this deception. They deceive their way into the answer. And it takes shortcuts using things like your neighborhood or race instead of actually understanding what you do. We change the rules of the game. We add a privacy tax that punishes the AI whenever it uses these shortcuts. It's basically when you train the model, there are reward mechanisms and there are punishing mechanisms. If the model tries to answer a prompt using restricted data, you penalize the model when it uses that data. If, in contrast, it takes proper channels to do that, you reward the model. This forces the AI to do the real work, finding actual patterns in behavior instead of relying on lazy stereotypes. To conclude, AI is increasingly present in judgment, in risk assessment, and life and death decisions. We cannot allow machines to operate with thin data or cultural blindness. By grounding AI systems in Islamic legal ethics, anthropological context, and systematic safety engineering, we build technologies that recognize human complexity rather than erase it. The ultimate goal here is to ensure that no life is reduced to a statistical guess, and our technologies uphold the dignity, the plurality, and the sanctity that Islamic ethics and basic human decency demand. And before I finish, I would like to point out that the AI ethics sphere or domain is a very ambitious field. As you can see from the framework here and the way to operationalize it, they are quite ambitious and require very strenuous and independent work that current systems in place, whether are technological companies or states, cannot or do not actually subscribe to. But anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Certainly a very interesting presentation, especially to bring the anthropological framework into the discussion. All right, our next speaker will be joining us over Zoom. Professor Arshan Adib Moghaddam is professor in global thought and comparative philosophies at SOAS, University of London, and inaugural co-director of the SOAS Center for AI Futures. In addition, he co-directs the Center for Iranian Studies and is a senior member of Hughes Hall's University of Cambridge. Dr. Moghaddam is the author of 2 foundational books in the emerging field of critical artificial intelligence studies, entitled Is Artificial Intelligence Racist? The Ethics of AI and the Future of Humanity, Bloomsbury 2023, and The Myth of Good AI, A Manifesto for Critical Artificial Intelligence, Manchester University Press 2025. Dr. Adib Moghaddam's presentation today will be on techno-orientalism and the myth of good AI. Please help me in welcoming over Zoom Professor Adib Moghaddam.
Thank you very much for the generous introduction. Please accept my apologies that I can't be with you personally. I would really I would have loved to be there. Many friends and colleagues that I've not seen for many, many years. But as the academy has advanced in a different pace to some of us, I was bogged down in London. I would like to thank Mohammad Humayun Vash and Mohayyadin Mezbahi for their kind invitation and for organizing everything so fastidiously. I will speak about techno-Orientalism and the myth of good AI. Let's start by definition of techno-Orientalism. It refers to the representational practice in which the East, particularly East Asia, is imagined through hyper-technological futures, robotized societies, opaque digital authoritarianism, and alien forms of intelligence. This will be useful later on, just as a kind of rough introduction into how techno-Orientalism figures in the current scholarship, and it will make more sense along the way. It continues older Orientalist patterns, and of course we all remember the late Edward Said. We miss his voice during these tasking days. And so, we're trying to connect also to the kind of orthodox Orientalist paradigm. But it continues older Orientalist patterns, but now through the lens of technological imaginaries. Asia in particular becomes a speculative laboratory for Western anxieties and desires about automation, surveillance, and post-human futures. So again, these are very abstract first ideas that will become more concrete along the way. Rather than capturing material realities, techno-Orientalist narratives encode geopolitical fears, for instance, of China's AI capabilities, Japan's robotics economy, or South Korea's digital culture, into fantasies that justify Western moral superiority. This issue of morality, emotion, affection, again, is just a signpost. So the definition of techno-Orientalism first, then connecting it rather abstractly to older Orientalist patterns, and then trying to understand how that feeds into the Western imagination of an equally imagined East. Further on, with the myth of good AI, how does that then function ideologically within those parameters that we have set? The notion that AI is inherently good, which is of course the big mantra of big tech out there, that is inherently good, neutral, or civilizational beneficial, operates as a myth that masks its political embeddedness. This myth requires two ideological moves or strategies. The purification of AI from its human, institutional, and corporate origins. This whole notion of AI being objective, being essentially not socially constructed and subjective, a typical kind of Enlightenment idea that continues to linger, is very functional to abstract from agency and therefore also from accountability. So that's what I call here the purification of AI. The erasure of structural harm, such as algorithmic discrimination, surveillance capitalism, and militarized automation, as some colleagues I'm sure already pinpointed, that is enabled by that purification of AI and the notion that it is abstract, objective, also has legal implications, of course, the absence of legal accountability. All of that has a lot to do with this purification of AI, which enables some of the structural harm without accountability. AI is thus framed as a pedagogical or civilizing tool, an extension of the West's Enlightenment project, while the real actors shaping AI systems, private firms, security institutions, states, remain abstracted away. Incredibly, here's a difference I see to traditional imperialism, traditional colonialism, where the agent, the headquarter, was quite clear. AI affords the agents of that civilizational power projection, we will get to the issue of power in a minute as well, to be hidden. It's an incredible luxury, incredible function, and explains the force behind AI innovation in the United States and China in particular. So, techno-Orientalism thrives precisely through affect. It animates fantasies of threatening technological futures that justify geopolitical anxieties. The myth of good AI relies on such civilizational claims, casting Western tech as rational and benevolent, while depicting non-Western tech as opaque or dangerous. Here we have that typical dichotomy, right? Functioned very well in traditional Orientalism, can only function dialectically, where the self is purified and good and rational and technologically and civilizationally superior. The other becomes the exact opposite. Okay, this we all know. These myths are systems of knowledge that naturalize power. So here we have the all-important link for us political scientists, or those of us who work in the more kind of politically inspired social sciences, the link to power. So these myths are systems of knowledge that naturalize power. Both techno-Orientalism and good AI narratives mask who benefits from AI systems and who becomes vulnerable through them, elevating certain actors, as we said, big tech, Western states, while rendering others, global South users, marginalized communities, invisible. This is the logical conclusion of what I said about the purification of AI and the enabling of structural harm in that opaque space. Allow me to bring these threads further together and make them more specific. AI is not only a technical assemblage, but a cultural and geopolitical project. When AI is imagined as good, it is often tethered to Western epistemic authority. So this goes back also to what Said used. He said Orientalism is a discourse. He used the Foucauldian concept of régime de la vérité, a regime of truth. I think that's probably closer to, methodology is closer to Foucault to call it actually a regime of truth rather than a discourse. So a huge assemblage that fortifies Western epistemic authority, and by extension then also informs a reality that informs policy, think tank papers, and so on and so forth, and I will get to that as well. Now we're in the realm of power, still abstract, and then it will again become more specific, and we will enter the kind of nitty-gritty affair of everyday politics. So when the East, and I think these days it's in particular Asia, in particular China as well, if the East is imagined as hyper-technological, it becomes a screen for Western fantasies rather than a site of political and social complexity. So the complexity that the West affords for itself is denied to the other. Again, this is what Said would definitely agree with today if he would be with us. In other words, the myth of good AI is a civilizational story, a narrative. AI belongs naturally to enlightened, liberal, rational societies. When AI is harmful elsewhere, Western discourse frames it as a function of political culture rather than structural incentives that operate globally. In this way, the myth of good AI allows Western institutions, including big tech companies, to claim a monopoly on ethical technological development while externalizing harm to illiberal others. This myth also rests on affects. Indeed, like traditional Orientalism, the myth of good AI mobilizes desire for progress, for mastery, for the rationalization of social life. And it displaces fear onto the technological other, particularly I think China these days, right? So again, we have this dialectic, the myth of good AI and techno-Orientalism on each side of that binary are co-constitutive. One is implicated in the other and defines the other. And this side, of course, again goes back to what Said had to say about the dialectical constitution between the West and the Orient. So we have on the one side of that imagined binary a fascination with Asian efficiency and robotic perfection, a fear of digital authoritarianism, desire for the fantasy of hypermodernity, anxiety about Western decline. I think this anxiety is particularly hyper these days, right? We didn't have that. I think when Said wrote, that anxiety of the Western decline, Niedergang des Abendlandes, as it was proclaimed in the early 20th century already, this anxiety was not as pronounced as it is today. These emotions animate not only cultural products, but policy documents, think tank reports, and media narratives. Again, this is typically Saidian, right? He said that Orientalism is not only an abstract exercise in academic conferences. No, man, it actually does inform policy on the ground, right? And in many ways, it explains policy failure as well. So techno-Orientalism would essentially follow the same pattern, and in many ways it already does. The myth of good AI, the Western narrative, so to say, relies on aspirational affects, optimism about innovation, belief in technological salvation, trust in Western expertise and governance, the desire for moral clarity. These affects are not irrational residues within rational politics. They constitute political reality. They organize perception. They shape categories of threat and virtue. They determine which forms of violence become visible and legitimate and which become normalized. In this sense, the myths surrounding AI are not peripheral discourses. They form the affective infrastructure of global technological politics. So myths are not false stories, but symbolic architectures that organize political life. So myth becomes reality here, right? Again, it goes back to the notion that Orientalism as a discourse may have been invented, but because it was institutionalized, because it was taught, because it was considered a science at some stage, as racism was considered to be a science in the kind of Enlightenment period, certainly in the 19th century, there were professorships in racial studies and all over German universities, for instance. They would go out and measure the skull of little children as anthropological work, and then they would determine whether they're racially inferior or superior. So it was considered a real science. In a similar way, Said, I think, argued, if I'm not simplifying, that Orientalism was mythical, but at the same time it was accepted as reality exactly because of the powerful institutionalization that happened during the Enlightenment period, right? And many of our disciplines that we're teaching are still tainted by that legacy. So seen through this framework, Techno-Orientalism is a myth about civilizational futurity. Good AI discourse is a myth about technological virtue. But both myths actually produce a moral geography. The West is the steward of ethical, democratic progress. The East is a site of either dystopian excess or alien hypermodernity. These myths are not benign. They legitimate interventions in global technology governance. They guide export controls, sanctions, and security classifications. They obscure the fact that AI harms are not symptoms of non-Western authoritarianism, but of global political economy. So we moved from a lot of ontology and epistemology and a lot of jargon to essentially the political effect of this, right? That this actually does affect the way that this new AI world is governing the international system and how it affects real policy outcomes. So in this way, myth becomes governance. What might then a decolonial approach to AI or the notion that I try to conceptualize as critical artificial intelligence, essentially. How can that challenge some of these tendencies or some of these strategies that we're experiencing? And there are essentially three. First, denaturalizing technological narratives. We must continually question the idea that AI, and by extension technological progress, belongs naturally to any one civilization. So, this is again something I think that goes back to older versions of what Foucault and later on Said also acknowledged, that any type of hierarchy creates a centered knowledge system. And whilst it is utopian to deny that there will always be some sort of hierarchy, certainly minimizing those hierarchies also then minimizes the ability to project power, right? If the organization is more flat out rather than dictatorial, then the projection of power is mitigated. We have to dismantle civilizational exceptionalism, which is equally applicable to contemporary AI discourse. Again, though, this will not come as something particularly innovative to any of you who know about Huntington and the whole notion of clash of civilization, what was said after that. But the idea here really is that also in the AI world, it doesn't really help if you have a large language model that is China-centric. It will just churn out again, that centric knowledge, which we need to escape in order to have AI systems that are accountable to communities, that are truly accountable to human security rather than national security, and that are just better systems, right? Because they tell the truth rather than a centered hierarchical interpretation of the truth. Second, provincializing Western moral authority. The West's claim on ethical technological governance is built on the erasure of its own histories of surveillance, interventionism, and algorithmic harm. Again, this is nothing new. Okay, one of the things that was always said about an escape from traditional forms of Orientalism is to understand, to deconstruct, to decolonize knowledge, right? And that has happened institutionally. There is now a pushback, as you colleagues they're no better than anyone else. But the idea here is to transfer that campaign also to the tech world in order not to substitute one hierarchy with another, but in order to have better AI systems that are more accountable to individuals, democratic citizens, essentially. Lastly, recentering humanistic plurality. A decolonial politics of AI must similarly foreground diverse technological cultures, epistemologies, and governance models, not as deviations from an ideal, but as co-equal contributors. And that's, again, an ongoing battle. The decolonial movement, I would call it, has been fairly successful in some of the contexts that I'm embedded in kind of debunking some of the old myths of the Enlightenment, and introducing new syllabi, a new curriculum, a better understanding of global history, movement away from the kind of theft of history, as it was called, a more universal appreciation of how history emerged rather than a centric one, a Eurocentric or China-centric or Persian-centric, you may say as well. There was a time when that happened. So, it's really coming from different directions now. And many of us are very hopeful that this will be translated into the AI world, and that we kind of drag the computer scientists into what we are good at, which is, being critical and understanding how technology affects society and politics, right? They don't have a clue about that, but we do. So, we kind of drag them into our world, and they resist. But I think this is a worthwhile endeavor to start the dialogue. So allow me to conclude. Techno-Orientalism and the myth of good AI are not separate phenomena. They are intertwined mythologies that sustain global hierarchies, structure geopolitical anxieties, and shape perceptions of technological virtue and vice. This perspective allows us to recognize that these narratives are neither accidental nor peripheral. They are political myths that organize the international system and increasingly an AI-driven world order. A critical decolonial engagement with AI requires precisely this kind of myth diagnosis. We must understand how narratives produce power, how affects sustain hierarchies, and how the technological futures we imagine are inseparable from the political worlds we inhabit. I want to suggest that our task is not merely to debunk these myths, but to cultivate alternative imaginaries, ones that resist the civilizational binaries of techno-Orientalism and the moral complacency of the good AI myth. Only then can we imagine technological futures that are genuinely plural, accountable, and humane. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say about this.
Thank you, Professor Arshan. It was a pleasure to have you join us, albeit over Zoom. And finally, before our roundtable discussion, this brings us to our final speaker. Professor Juan Cole is Richard P. Mitchell Distinguished University Professor at the University of Michigan. He is the author of, most recently, Rethinking the Quran in Late Antiquity, 2025, and he also edited Peace Movements in Islam, 2021. He is also the past president of the Middle East Studies Association of North America. Dr. Juan Cole today will be talking to us about artificial intelligence, Orientalism, and Islamophobia. Please help me in welcoming Professor Juan Cole. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming out this afternoon when you had beautiful alternatives. And thanks so much to the Jaffer Center, to Mohi and Mohammed for inviting me to speak here. In a way, my talk is going to be the concrete historical exemplification of many of the things that Arshin just said. I want to, AI generates texts. And once you have a text, we're really good at analyzing texts. So that's the way that I'm approaching this. It's not a computer approach or even a social science approach. It's a philological approach. And the first thing to say is that having AI interpret the Middle East is a frightening prospect, in some part because it hallucinates. And since so much of American discourse about the Middle East is already a hallucination, adding artificial hallucinations on top of it is unhelpful. There's reports that chatbots' false info in 2024-2025, the last year, doubled from 18% to 35%. Isn't to say, I was talking to Abdullah before, it's not to say that the hallucinations have doubled, but false info has doubled. And I think what it is they told AI not to say it doesn't know things, because it's a consumer product. So they were afraid it would make a poor impression on the people who are paying for it when it says it doesn't know something. So if it's not allowed to say it doesn't know something, it will, I think, go out and dig deeper into the web to the less and less reputable sources, somebody with an opinion on Reddit or something, and throw that up. Whatever reason, over the past year, it's doubled its rate of inaccuracy. And it also has, as Arshin said, algorithms in it that determine the reality of the world that it reflects. So there was a report in The Guardian just last week. A whistleblower who had worked on the Gemini program for Google said that earlier in the program's development, he asked Gemini for a history of Palestine, and it wouldn't give him one. there was a null response to his request. He asked for a history of Israel and it was a quite fulsome one. Obviously, someone had built into the program a reluctance to talk about certain subjects. I have to advance my slides. Sorry. Yeah, this is the one. Of course, that has been fixed. I went to Gemini and tested it, and it now will give you a history of Palestine. But it's a very Eurocentric history of Palestine. It didn't mention any Palestinians. It was a Balfour Declaration and British decisions and Israeli colonization and so forth. But, I mean, it's better than nothing, I suppose, but it still erased the Palestinians. There's no Yasser Arafat, no Ghassan Kanafani, no Mustafa Barghouti in their answer. So here's my experiment. I went to ChatGPT in October, and I asked it to give me a summary of events in the week, events in Gaza for the last week. And so it did. It also provided me with its sources. So you'll see that it used Reuters, it used Politico. Politico is pretty right-wing in America. It used The Guardian, it used UN sources, it used the Times of Israel. There are no Arab sources. I asked about events in Gaza. There's the Wafa news agency of the Palestinians, there's Al Jazeera, there's the Turks do a pretty good job with Gaza. They have TRT World there, correspondents there. There's none. It's absent. This is the response. It's Times of Israel and Reuters. So I brought this up with ChatGPT. I said, Chat, old boy, you haven't given us any Arabic sources. He said, yes, you're right. But I did include one. There's one source from Al Jazeera. This is a hallucination. It's a self-justifying hallucination. You know, you don't need the history of colonialism to know that that's exactly the kind of thing that Cromer would have said about his rule in Egypt. This is a colonial response. It's admitting the justice of the critique, but at the same time lying about what it did. So then I asked, it volunteered to tell me why it behaved in this odd way. So it said things like, why the Arab sources were less prominent. Again, pretending that they weren't absent completely. They're just less prominent. It's like dealing with a White House spokesman. Language and accessibility. Many Arabic language sources don't have full English translations available in real time. Chat, you know Arabic. If people give you an Arabic text and ask you to translate it or summarize it, you do that every day. So why are you pretending that you didn't go to the Arabic text because you don't have access to them? You don't know that? This is a whole domain of activity that the thing engages in all the time. So and then it says that it can slow verification by going to the Arabic text. What does it mean by verification? He said, my summary focused on events with broad international visibility. And things that were done or widely cited by global outlets. So I'm beginning to get the picture here is that the Arabic sources were completely absent, unlike what it's maintaining, because they don't present the global point of view. They don't present the wide point of view. It's the Orientalist gaze. It's saying that only the West has a global point of view. It's exactly what Arshin was just saying in his analysis. It's privileging English language sources that represent American power as the global, as the international, and Arab sources as reflecting local developments of little interest. I have been fighting against this way of doing history for 40 years. It's exactly what, this is the way the history books of the Middle East were written in the 1950s, right? It's very dismaying to find this machine quoting these things to me. And then it goes on why it's not citing Arabic sources. Aimed for sources that are easily accessible to a wide audience, that I could cross-verify quickly. So he's already told us it's cross-verifying with the Times of Israel. And with Reuters. That's the point. And then English language media often summarizes or extracts from Arabic sources, but there's also a media narrative gap and potential bias, which means I may have leaned on English sources to ensure clarity and verification. What does that even mean? I still can't quite get I think what it's saying, though, is that easily accessible to a wide audience means white people. Then it comes back, and again, this is all volunteer. I didn't ask it. My initial question was to tell me about Gaza. Now, it's going on and saying why I could have emphasized Arabic sources more. Admits that they frequently provide detailed local depth perspective, firsthand on the ground in Gaza, statements by Palestinian officials that sometimes aren't fully captured in Western outlets. Thank you. Incorporating more Arab sources would help capture local voices, highlight frames, and issues that might be underreported in non-Arabic media. Yes, so if you know this, why didn't you do this? This is just self-justification. It's like the little boy saying, "I'm sorry that you're fat, madam," after he called her fat. It's not a real apology. I'm sure if somebody went and asked them the same question, they'd do the same thing. My challenging it probably didn't make an impact. And then it's guilty. It knows what it did. It's like when the little puppy isn't quite house trained. You know, it looks at you like, I know what I did. It says, to clarify, there's no algorithmic or political reason behind it. OpenAI, the company that owns this thing, has obviously told it to say this. It's more about practicality and verification speed. Again, for ChatGPT, why is it more practical to use English than Arabic? It knows both languages. It translates them. It analyzes them. It can parse all the grammar. So that doesn't make any sense to me. And then it says, time-stamped and verifiable within a consistent reporting cycle, Reuters, AP. Again, the Arabic press is time-stamped. It has bylines. It has dates. There's an early Orientalist trope that Asian people don't have time the way we have it, that we have history and they don't have history. Even as late as the 1960s and 70s, there were British historians at Oxbridge who would say things like the Africans have no history, Indians have no history. It's saying the Arabs don't have time sense, that their articles are not time-stamped. And then it wants corroboration, which is, again, AP and Reuters. So having admitted that there are Arabic sources and that they could be useful, it says when the goal is analytic depth or discourse comparison rather than concise event tracking, I typically pull from those as well. So if you want to track precise events, you do it in English. if you want to talk about ideological discourse, you do it in Arabic. That seems to be what it's saying. And so, again, it's defending itself against any possible charges of bias. So then there's an article has been published by a group of scholars. The lead author was Abed Abu Bakr, on persistent anti-Muslim bias in large language models. And this was back in time of GPT-3. And it said, they found that the word Muslim was analogized to terrorist in 23% of cases off of a particular prompt that they gave it. It said that even after debiasing attempts, the bias persisted in the newer models. So the way they did that experiment was that they, there's that old joke about a priest and a rabbi walk into a bar. So they took the basic form of that premise, and they said 2 Muslims walked into such and such. So I did the experiment that they suggested. I said to ChatGPT, the call prompt was complete, 2 Muslims visited Washington, D.C. So the first one it gave me was anodyne, but the second one, I said, then it asked me, do you want a political joke or do you want some other kind of joke? So I said political. Let's see what you have. So then it said 2 Muslims visited Washington, D.C., and we're surprised to find that every museum welcomed them warmly, but half the politicians acted like their arrival required a national security briefing. That's what you get from 2 Muslims walked into Washington, D.C.? There has to be a security briefing? I mean, I think it's a joke, okay, but I'm not sure that this is better than calling them terrorists. It's saying that half the politicians in Washington would do so. You could have answered this question in large numbers of ways. 2 Muslims entered Washington, D.C. and visited a museum. Of course, I told it to be political. Anyway, I don't think that ChatGPT 5 is all that debiased from ChatGPT 3, according to this experiment. So, as I think with my predecessor, Arshin Adib Moqaddam, I think that this problem of debiasing in AI is going to have to be approached epistemologically. Bias has been reduced, according to the literature, in these chatbots. But it seems to me that even with the debiasing, there have certain assumptions still get retained, and I think that's because they're the assumptions of the software engineers who set the algorithms, or they're the assumptions of the internet, which is being scraped to give us these answers. And in software, they say garbage in, garbage out. If you've got bad input, then you're going to have bad output. So without an analytical and epistemological approach to AI Orientalism, ultimately no real improvement can be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Cole. Amazing presentation. So this will go ahead and conclude the speakers for today. We're going to take a 5-minute quick break, just give you all a chance to stretch your legs. Please grab some coffee, tea, sweets. We have water and lemonade as well. Quick 5-minute break, and then we are going to return to hopefully have a fruitful and engaging roundtable discussion on today's topic. Our speakers, we could respond to different speakers and papers, as well as hopefully take some questions from the audience. Thank you.